Good evening and welcome to ELOSOFUMARTAKES. This is our 89th take live from Euless, Texas. I'm Barry Duplessis, your host as always, and I'm so proud, so pleased, and so privileged to be hosting another take for you all this week. And I'm so excited to welcome in my guest, who I will introduce shortly. But before we get started, we always got to thank the people that make this show possible. And of course, this show would not be possible without our sponsors, Drew Estate. Just a couple of weeks ago, Drew Estate announced the national release of Acid 20 to retailers nationwide. The chromed-out double-decade masterpiece was first showcased at the 2019 IPCPR trade show held in Las Vegas. Over the past 20 years, Acid has become a vital, must-have brand with all sales channels of the cigar industry. To celebrate this tremendous milestone, they are honored to introduce the Acid 20, a box-press Robusto, internally billed as the best acid release since Cuba Cuba. Acid 20 is wrapped in a lush, toothy Mexican San Andreas Capa with ultra-premium Indonesian binder and filler leaves from Nicaragua, with a subtle and evolving profile blessed with a blend that is truly worth a double-decade title. And gets the personal recommend from me and at least one of my guests tonight, who I know enjoys the cigar as well. And no, Drew Estate did not pay me to say that. So want to thank everyone for tuning in. And if you guys are tuning in live on Facebook or catching us later on YouTube, we really appreciate that. But if you are listening to wherever you listen to podcasts, whether that be at Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, TuneIn, or wherever you listen to podcasts, you are listening to us exclusively because of Cornelius and Anthony Premium Cigars. Cornelius and Anthony Premium Cigars is steeped in tobacco tradition. For over 150 years, the Bailey family has been a part of America's tobacco heritage, passionately caring for the land they cultivate in Keysville, Virginia. Cornelius and Anthony's devotion to the finest grown in tobacco and foremost aspects of craftsmanship allows them to introduce the most exquisite cigars to the market. They invite you to enjoy their portfolio of premium, hand-rolled cigars and experience their dedication to producing an exceptional product. Oh, well, welcome to Take 89. And I am so excited to welcome in a fantastic duo of guests. And I'm going to be doing this one at a time. I think I did this last time, so I'm going to switch it up again. I'm going to try. But from the two of the finest gentlemen representing Cigar Federation tonight, we have Tripp Waldrop and Denis Tsvang. Tripp, how you doing tonight?
I am doing pretty well. Excited to be on the show once again. Always love hanging out with you, doing the show, and you know, hanging out and drinking beer and smoking cigars. That's kind of my thing.
I was gonna say it's not. We're not really doing anything that sucks right now. This is totally.
Exactly.
So before I introduce our next guest here, I do have to ask a question. So apparently, for as long as he's known you, our friend Rob Rasmussen, has been mispronouncing your name. So
apparently, that's what I've heard.
And so I asked him, like, how have you pronouncing it? And he says wrong. So do we have any idea how he's been pronouncing your name?
Yes, I do know. He did confirm to me. He's been saying Waldrop instead of Waldrop.
Okay, Waldrop. Okay, so like putting an N on it instead of a P, or like
kind of an I in it instead of an O.
Okay. Okay, got it. Okay.
So it's not a drip, it's a drop.
Yeah, it's not a drip, it's a drop.
Okay. 10-4.
Fine distinction.
Drop, not a drip.
I love how he just didn't even put any phonetics on there. You just kind of put that out into the Facebook land area, and I was like, "Well, so how did you been mispronouncing it?" It's like wrong.
Threw
I'm like,
it to the
okay,
wolves.
fair enough.
I mean, that's fair. That's a great answer, I think.
Fantastic. Well, we welcome in our next guest, of course, making his return to ELOSOFUMARTAKES. We want to welcome in Cigar Federation's Denis Tsvang. Denis, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, man, fantastic. I'm just excited because we haven't seen each other in what? It's been months, right? Since the trade show.
Since the trade show?
Yeah, about 2 months.
2 months.
Dude, it already feels like that was so long ago.
Yeah, I mean,
the next one's kind of looming over.
a lot of water under the bridge or over the dam, or being swept away by press releases or whatever. So a lot of
oh boy,
a lot of stuff been going on. So we're gonna get to some of that tonight, but we obviously need to tee it up. Do have to mention though, every time he is on the show, he sets a new record. This is Tripp's fourth visit to the show. So he is now again in sole possession of the most appearances on.
I am?
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you probably mentioned it last time, but I definitely forgot since then.
A couple
Yeah.
people have tied you since then, but now this with this
Okay.
appearance, this makes your fourth, and
Nice.
so therefore you are in sole command in the lead. Dennis, unless I need to maybe just get you on solo at some point, so you can kind of at least vie for the title as well.
Catch up. Yeah.
But Dennis is one behind with a couple of other guests. I just had Miguel Chadel on last week, and that was his third appearance as well.
Well, I wanna thank the Academy. This really means a lot.
Thank your mom. She's the real MVP.
Exactly.
A lot of beer and cigars. In 4 appearances.
Very true.
Awesome. Well, we've got a fantastic show tonight, guys. We're gonna go a little bit back to what we've been doing. And the first one is as much of a train wreck as it was. It's still fun. The second one was a lot of fun, and we decided to return to format. Yeah. So we're going with some blind tastings, but we're going to throw in some crazy questions this week, this time around. So this will be fun and entertaining as we kind of try to guess the cigar. So again, if you guys have not seen the other 2 episodes with Denis and Tripp, so here is the name of the game. We all sent each other regional beers. So we are starting tonight with my selection, which is from Panther Island Brewing Company from here in Fort Worth, Texas. And we are drinking an Allergies, an unfiltered American wheat ale. Nothing too crazy, 5.7% and 16 IBUs, so nothing too bitter or hoppy. And then, of course, the idea, again, is we all sent each other a cigar to go pairing with our beers, but the cigar is blind. So that is
a mystery.
Yes, so we have to try and figure out what we sent each other here. So we've all lit up the cigar. We've all poured the beer a little bit. Want to kind of get some initial thoughts before we start talking about the beer. Dennis, I'll start with you since I introduced you second. What's your initial thoughts on the beer?
I'm very curious. Like you said, it's light, but it's kind of got this sort of refreshing. I don't want to call it a twang. It's not really a twang for me, but it's kind of this.
That's the word I was thinking of.
It's like
I thought of a better word actually right before you said that you don't want to say twang, because I also didn't want to say twang.
Right. I mean, because that kind of makes it seem like it's a little bit sharp and in your face, and it's not. Actually, it's oddly well balanced. Not something that normally I expect, and generally something like this that has chamomile flowers in it. That's a tough flavor to transfer in anything, really, even tea. Like. You really have to brew a lot and kind of fine tune the rest of the beer to get those flavors out. And it seems like they did a pretty good job with it.
Yeah, they brewed some really crazy stuff in here. So they've got as Dennis mentioned, they've got the chamomile flowers. Dennis, so everyone knows like the background of this. I picked this beer specifically. 1, I really enjoy it. 2, I thought it really did pair well with the cigar.
And 3, the reference. The reference is where it's at. That I almost killed you in our first episode because of allergies.
Yes, exactly.
It
was just so perfect. But like you guys bring on, so I've become a really big fan of the sharing our pairings show that you guys co-host every Wednesday. Pop in as much as I can on Cigar Federation. So check out Cigar Federation's page on every Wednesday for sharing our pairings, and then Cigar Chat on Thursdays the following day. But this beer kind of spoke to me because you guys do drink some pretty standard stuff, but you guys do really branch out on occasion. And so I was like, I have to embrace my inner Denis and Tripp, and I was like, here we go. An award-winning unfiltered American wheat ale that is deep golden in color with a nice haze. This is the description from Panther Island Brewing Company. This beer is brewed with local honey from Rogers, Texas, chamomile flowers, and rose hips. The Mount Hood hops give this beer a great finish that pairs well with honey and spices. So, and they put award-winning all over their website and all over pretty much their social media pages and everything, but they don't tell you what award it is. And so I had to do some digging, and they won a silver medal at the Great American Beer Festival for this.
That's
beer.
Like a big deal. Like I would think if they weren't telling you what it was like Bill from
Yeah.
the Hobunk Tribune said it was the best beer.
The best beer he's had since going sober.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I just think it's one of those things that, like, there's sometimes, like, Tripp, you and I were talking about this before the show. There's nothing more frustrating when you're like really excited about a beer or even a brewery and they have nothing on it, and you're just kind of like left wanting for information.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, for me, part of it is like, on the show, we pick, for anybody who hasn't watched it, we pick 3 different drinks and then we talk about them and drink them and see how they do with the cigar. If I only have like a minute of material about each one, it's going to be a really short show.
Then that's when just, like, crazy. That's when the crazy just shenanigans ensue and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
But
we just end up shooting the shit for 20 minutes and then we're way off schedule.
It's like blah 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 Diageo blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep going. But I think what's interesting about this beer in particular is that, like, as crazy as some of those ingredients sound, the chamomile, rose hips, even honey, which can be cloying, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're all, it's very subtle. In fact, I don't really get too much of that floralness unless you kind of, when it warms up, it tends to, that you get a little bit more of that floral aspect just from my previous experience with this beer. But it's like right on the, I've had these beers out for about 30 minutes now. And, but the floral note doesn't necessarily come through at all.
Yeah, I'm not really getting a floral note from it. I do get like I was gonna say twang, but I decided to go with a pop of like that honey sweetness. And it's not like a typical honey sweetness. It reminds me a little bit of what nerds refer to as heather honey and scotch. It's kind of actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, maybe I am getting some of the floral, because heather honey is kind of like a more floral, almost grassy version of honey.
Well, it is wildflower honey from Rogers, Texas, so that's another thing too.
So I think I'm actually getting more of that flavor than I thought I was. Now that I'm talking about it.
Now that kind of explore. See, like, I really think that beer companies need to, like, take a lesson from cigar companies and really just play up the story, man. I mean, sometimes, like, I fall hook, line, and sinker for stories. I am totally that guy that, like, buys into every, like, piece of bullshit that gets delved out. And, it's just like, we named this cigar the Third Sunset because on the third sunset of the day, which doesn't exist, but in this one moment on this one field, it felt like there was a third sunset, and that's why we named this cigar the Third Sunset. Just totally made that up off the top of my head. That's why it sounds
good.
ludicrous.
That was good. You can sell that.
Yeah, exactly. And I totally buy into that stuff with cigars. They need to do like every brewery needs to go and spend a day.
I agree.
Like in Nicaragua, in the Dominican, or in Honduras, and just kind of rotate around some. I mean,
or just in a cigar shop looking at shelf talkers.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, where it says that bullshit story. Like, for me, I know they're all bullshit, and I'll even say, like, as somebody's talking about it, I'll be like, that story's bullshit, right? But the thing that I find interesting is the storytelling part of it. It's not about whether or not the story's true. It's about the story being interesting.
And I think that's, and like these head brewers and these people that, like, start breweries and brew beer for a living. I mean, they're really interesting people, just like the people that manufacture cigars and these cigar celebrities that we talk to all the time, and I have guests on the show, just like you guys have them on Cigar Chat and everything. I mean, they're really fascinating people. I mean, this isn't just like random business owner. I mean, we're talking about people who create an artisan made product. Same thing with beer, an artisan made product that's handmade and it's for the general public to enjoy. And so, like, I think that there could be a lesson from beer companies specifically on that. So as much as we're sitting here criticizing Panther Island Brewing, I selected their beer because I really enjoy their beers. Found out the head brewer is a Yankee fan, though, which kind of sucks for me. So I may not be drinking as much more as I thought I was going to. But they have four other regular production year-round beers that they make available. This is the one I've definitely had the most by far.
This is one of the regular productions?
This is one of the regular productions. Okay. So, but they also have the War Chant, great name, which is an American amber, which is only another 5% beer. So not too heavy-handed, right? But then they get into their Scotch Strong Ale at 8.2%, which is called Cannonball. And I've had that one. What's really interesting about that, because when you guys had the, I gave you guys the Iron Thistle the first time we did this from RAR.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that Scotch Ale was really dark. And when you think of Scotch Ales or wee heavies, I mean, you think of dark browns, blacks.
Yeah.
You know, so the Cannonball, what's really interesting about this is it's got a ruby red, deep ruby red. It's red though, which is crazy. And
I've seen a couple Scotch ales like that, but typically you're right. It's kind of a dark beer, but then once in a while you find one that's almost more of a red ale.
Well, that's the thing. It's kind of like the bastard son. It's the Irish red, kind of delving into the Scotch territory, so to speak. You have those elements, the body especially, and that's kind of the biggest thing that I found with Scotch ales. Even if the color is the same, sometimes you get this really intense difference in the kind of the mouthfeel, the thickness of the beer. You can have really thin ones, you have really thick ones, and kind of both seem to work really well for that style.
Yeah, I really, when I first started, everyone always talks about when they first start drinking beer and they don't like IPAs. I really was not a Scotch ale guy. And then I started having some, because I think the first one I had was Bellhaven, which just is terrible. Still is.
I was the same way. Like I grew up in the Northeast where Magic Hat is a thing, and I've gone back a couple times and been like, Magic Hat's just terrible. There's no way around it. Magic Hat sucks, or at least their number 9 does. But I went into beer thinking that that's what craft beer tasted like, and so I had a couple of their IPAs and stuff, and I was like, ugh, this is horrendous. Then I moved to the West Coast where like somebody was like, here, try this IPA. And it was like, okay, I guess so. And I tasted it. It was like, it changed my life.
It's like, oh,
it turned me
beer
into
can
a beer
be
nerd
good.
all of a sudden.
It's like beer can be good.
Well, like, when I turned 21, I was drinking like Dos Equis and stuff like that. Like I liked beer with more flavor than all my friends, but I like couldn't get into the IPA side of things because they were all the old style of Northeast IPA where it's super sweet, which doesn't really exist anymore, which is very strange that style has just gone away.
It's unfortunate a little bit. The speaking of IPAs though, which is that's also their fourth regular production, which is the IPF&A.
That's a great name. Great name.
That's fantastic.
Fucking best name ever. Like seriously, it's probably, yeah. I mean, it's simple and to the point, and it's just awesome. So it's an imperial though. So now we're talking about some heavy-handed beer. But even for an imperial, right? It's still on the quote unquote lower end of imperial. We're talking about 10%, 10.1, but 97 IBUs.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Dude.
That sounds like my kind of beer. Yeah.
So huge. So there's a huge malt bill to it. I've had it before. Really nice caramel flavor as well. And they also use coriander in the brewing process. But they dry hop it with Cascade, which, Cascade can be really potent and really gives off that, vibrant citrus nose that when you think of, wildflower honey and rose hips, that's what you're thinking about when you're thinking Cascade, not what we're drinking now. But it's got a real nice fruitiness to it. And it's also got Summit, Columbus, and Centennial hops. So 4 hops go into this Imperial IPF&A. And it's a good beer. And then their last one, of course, is the Tailgater, which again, back down the percentage thing. It's an American cream ale. It's at 4.8%.
That's perfect.
It's actually my least favorite, and I'm a big fan of cream ales. It's my least favorite of theirs. Not to say it's bad. I mean, I will totally drink it. But what's really interesting about it is they use Willamette hops in it, which I find to be, I don't know, like they're a little bit more aromatic, and the that beer, it just really isn't that aromatic. The flavor is good. It's got real nice maltiness, and it's got a really nice, it finishes really clean, which is indicative of cream ales to begin with. But the aroma is kind of leaves me a little bit wanting on it. But it's damn good beers, all of them.
I love the trend of cream ales instead of pilsners.
Right.
There's a lot of breweries these days where they would normally use a cream ale, like for their low gravity, kind of everyday beer. There's a lot of people, or they would normally use a pilsner rather, to be more like what people are used to, like Budweiser. But instead they go cream ale, which I really appreciate.
That actually brings up an interesting point that I was just thinking about, kind of a tie into the cigar industry a little bit in a sense. Generally, in today's world, especially when you talk about craft beer, you kind of expect to go to a store and pay, depending on where you are, at least in my part of the country, probably $16 to $20 easily for a 4-pack. Easily for like primo, local stuff, right? And that's kind of standard everywhere you go. You go into a bar, craft beer is probably like $7 to $9, depending on kind of what kind of a pour it is, what the beer is, if it's limited. But nobody's really doing that sort of what we see in the cigar industry, where a manufacturer will go out and they'll make a cigar for $6, $7, right? They have their sort of $14, $15 sticks, but they'll make a release that's more accessible to kind of someone just starting to explore either the brand or maybe cigars in general. And I'm thinking, what if breweries started to do something similar, like a cream ale, right, or a tailgate beer, where it's just cheaper. You can get a case of it for pretty cheap. They do a deal on it or something like that, just a little bit cheaper. But it makes it a little bit more accessible to the average person who may not be as well versed in kind of that style or that brewery.
That actually is a trend out here.
Oh, really?
So there are a couple of the bigger craft breweries. I think Oscar Blues, I think, has one. I know that 10 Barrel, which is local, and Deschutes, which is local, both have a 15-pack of beers. That's like, remember the old, like, when Pepsi came in a cube? It's like one of those.
Oh, is it like a sampler?
No, it's a 15-pack of their Pilsner or whatever it is. Wow. Whatever their super drinkable big seller is. Because they're trying to target that market of people who they go in and they buy a rack of Budweiser or Coors Light or whatever it is. And they're trying to give them a similar price point for a not quite so similar product that's way better quality. That still is coming in, a volume pack, if you will. But that does seem to be a trend out here. Same thing with the I actually was reading an article about the 19.2 ounce stovepipe cans that said that was part of the same trend, where they're trying to put that up against like the 24 ounce cans that you can get Budweiser and stuff like that in, which I think is really interesting.
The problem is you look at the East Coast market, and I think you've seen a little bit of this before you moved out west, where we have like Lagunitas, so you can get that in a.
Lagunitas is one of the other brands that's doing
in a big can.
Dude,
that can is so expensive, and something like Deschutes, which is local to you, but for us, it's very hard to get. It's if you see it at a bar, it's going to be way overpriced. And I wondered, Bear, do you see that in your beer space, where anything outside of the state tends to be a lot more expensive just because it happens to be, another craft manufacturer?
Yeah, because when the Texas Alcohol, the TABC, I forgot what it's called, but the Texas Alcohol Bureau and Commission, that's it. There we go. Texas Alcohol Bureau and Commission is such a freaking mafioso type dictatorship on everything that is beer. I mean, it's really hard it was really hard for a while until like RAR and a couple of these ones that kind of got started really cracked the formula in Texas, and people have just kind of followed suit all over the state. And it's a really large state, which is really great. But TABC is such a being. And so to get it outside of the state, I mean, it was a big deal. Like Shinerbach was a huge deal. I mean, 15 years ago when I was in college, and you couldn't get it. And when like some of my friends from Oklahoma, like they first were able to get Shinerbach in Oklahoma, were like flipping out, like, oh my God, we got Shinerbach. And it was like a huge deal and everything. Like now you see Shinerbach everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, did you see it up in New York and New Jersey, Dennis?
All over the place. Everywhere.
Okay, yeah, everywhere.
And it's so overpriced.
It's so overpriced.
Listen, I like Shiner, but unfortunately the New York market is to them it's trendy, it's cool, and it's been trendy for a couple of years now. And so you walk in, you want to get a pint of even the basic beer. It's probably like $9 or $10.
Yeah. I mean, that's just, yeah, it's obnoxious. I went into a bar one time in Colorado, and they're like, oh, you're from Texas. Have you had Shinerbach? And I'm like, only about 1,500 times. And I saw the price on the menu for it. It was like $9 for a pint. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, dude. It's nuts.
And Shinerbach has really gone down since its like 100th anniversary, which was like 10 years ago. Their 107, they were doing anniversary beers each year, and their 107, which actually became their Shiner Black, was so good. When it was first released, and when they did the mass market, it's still really good. But you know, much like we've heard in the cigar industry all the time, it's not the same.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. And how do you really maintain that? Look at all these breweries that were bought out, Ballast Point, Clown Shoes, all these different breweries that were kind of picked up by someone else. Yeah, they're still doing their own thing, but at the same time, everyone mentions it's not the same. It doesn't really have that same feel. And I think it's not just it's not just on an emotional level with the consumer. It's more really with the actual product itself. Something is different. They've now changed the process. And when you go to scale, a lot of times with something like, you know, that has that finesse, like beer or cigars, you start producing at scale, you lose some of those elements that really kind of make it special and unique.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the worst things about when they're scaling, when beer companies tend to scale something that they've done in such special quantity and everything, is that they expect it to be the same. Like even them, like they've bought into their own, you know, their own bullshit, you know, a little bit. And they expect, oh, it's the same, blah, blah. You know, it's like the same old thing I get into with cigar smokers in the retail sector when they're like, oh, like I'll be like, hey, when's the last time you had a Liga Privada? Like, oh, I haven't smoked Liga in years because, you know, they're not the same. Yeah. Liga Privada just celebrated its 10th anniversary last year. They've been around for 11 years. It's a man-made vintage product. So the tobacco is different.
Tobacco changes. That's how it works.
It's not the same. Yeah. And if you just appreciate it for what it is, a fantastic cigar, I think people kind of get over it. But that's, you know, and that also when they sold the Swisher too, like people came in the next day like, oh, this isn't the same. It tastes different. I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah.
It's like
yeah, it'll be 3 years before their fermentation process changes.
Yeah. If it does at all, you know, like that's the thing. Yeah.
But I mean, before they could be different, it would be at least, I mean, I guess 2 years would be kind of like if they suddenly were like cutting corners, that was the quickest they could change the product.
So before I ask you guys about this pairing that I put together, I wanted to ask you one question here. So what is your guys' guilty pleasure beer? The beer you go back to time and time again. It's not cool. It's not hip. It's not trendy. it's your shit. It's your jam. What's that beer? And if you guys don't want to go first, I will totally fall in the solar and go first.
I don't know if I have one.
Because you just drink so different, like all over the time, all the time. All
like
the place?
I think probably in the last year, maybe more than that, I haven't bought the same 6-pack twice.
Okay, all right, that's fair. But you guys are always doing these pairing shows, so it's kind of like
exactly. It's part of the job, if you will. It's a hazard of the job where I just don't end up going back to the same beers. Actually, I've got a really good one that I just thought of. There is a beer that I've bought several times, but every time like I see it at a restaurant or something, I get it. It's 10 Barrel Cucumber Sour.
Oh, all right.
And it's
You heard what I said about trendy, right? No, just kidding.
No, I mean, that's the only beer I can think of. But, I mean, drinking 10 Barrel around here is very uncool because they're owned by AB InBev. And, you know, they used to be a cool local brewery, and now they're AB InBev's Northwest station.
Oh, okay.
But that one beer is the one that I consistently go back to because it's like a Goza where it's just super refreshing. I kind of wish that I had one that was embarrassing, but unfortunately I don't think I do. Man,
Gozas are something I can't do, man. I can't get into it. I've had a couple that are like all right, you know, but man, I just can't do it. I can't. I had a couple that I like of sours that I didn't like, and then I tasted a Goza and I was like, I'm on the sour train now. This one's probably a little more sour than most Gozas, but it's like, I don't know, lightly cucumbery, but a little bit sour. Right. The thing that I think is really fascinating about Gozas is that is like when you ask people to define them, like they usually the characterization that gets thrown at is like sweaty gym sock.
Mm-hmm.
Wrung out into a glass, and it's like, how is that even appealing? But yet that's like kind of one of the universal descriptors of it, but people gravitate towards them.
Hey, Scotch and tire fires and iodine doesn't sound sexy at all, but somebody that is a Scotch person that is into that kind of area of Scotch,
yeah,
you say it to them and they get it. They know that it's not really, you're not being literal in a sense. You're kind of describing a moment in time. That's what all this really is at the end of the day, right? Our palates change all the time. For example, lately I've been complaining about IPAs. I spent a long time complaining about lactose. You know this. And now I'm starting to explore the beers that I was really into 5-10 years ago. And probably 5 years ahead, I'll go back to IPAs. And, you know, as our palates evolve, as we experience more, it's just bound to happen.
So what is Denis Tsvang's guilty pleasure beer?
Oh man, I mean, I guess it is kind of embarrassing because this it's a seasonal thing, right? I have a couple. It's tough. If I'm in a store, there are really kind of three beers that, so year round, there's one beer that if I see it, almost every time, if I see it, I'll buy a bottle just to have. And it's Runenbach Grand Cru, which is a slightly kind of Belgian sour ale. It's not a full sour necessarily. It has a little funk to it. It's kind of just a really cool beer that I got into years ago and I've always loved. But another kind of, I guess they're a brewery. They make a lot of cider, but they do wild fermented ciders. And that's in upstate New York called Graft Cider. If I see their stuff, I always buy it because I know I can either drink it or, you know, if somebody comes over that's not really a beer person or a Scotch person, that's something I can give them and likely they'll enjoy it. And then, you know, Halloween is coming. And for me, Halloween is year round. So Southern Tier's Pumpkin, that's my go-to pumpkin beer. I do pumpkin everything, unfortunately. And that's, I think people, you know, kind of, I get shit for that all the time, right? I love the pumpkin stuff. Right now, as we speak, in my refrigerator, I have Thomas's English Muffins pumpkin spice. Not kidding.
Wasn't there a pumpkin spice cigar last year before?
Yeah, Tatiana's got a pumpkin spice.
Okay.
Did they really?
I think CAO did one too, or somebody else. I'm not sure.
Nate McIntyre from Miami Cigar Company has been saying just how surprisingly, not surprisingly, how well that cigar is done.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You know what? I think he was talking about that last year at IPCPR that he was like, these people are crazy that they think they're going to sell this, and then they're flying off the shelves.
Yeah.
Did they really make that pumpkin spice spam? I can't remember if that was I don't know if that was a joke or if that was a real thing.
I would believe it was a thing. I'm pretty sure.
That's horrible.
Yeah. Well, half the stuff that's pumpkin spice is horrible, if not more.
I agree.
Than half.
It's overdone.
Yeah.
Based on their marketing this year, I would not be surprised to see a PBR pumpkin spice.
Oh my God.
Pretty soon.
Yeah.
They've been going nuts with just weird, I don't know, hopping onto weird trends.
But speaking of AB InBev being the evil empire, as it were, my guilty pleasure beer that's just every day, man. Budweiser, man, the original Budweiser.
Really?
Yeah, dude. So there's something very nostalgic about it. So that was
always.
the beer that was that. So I grew up in El Paso, Texas. Local minor league baseball team is the El Paso Diablos. Now it's the El Paso Chihuahuas. Really, really unfortunate that's the name now. But
Diablos was just a little too aggressive, so they had to go
Super
the
aggressive,
opposite
smaller
direction.
packaging.
Well, the Diablos were a Double-A baseball team, and then they actually went independently because they lost their affiliation with the Diamondbacks in the early 2000s, and so there were a couple years of just regular independent ball. And they had this really at the time state-of-the-art stadium called Cohen Stadium out in Northeast El Paso. In the late 80s, it was actually even featured in National Geographic, and they just never made any updates to it. And so a really big project a few years ago was creating a downtown space and actually making, because downtown El Paso had just become kind of fallen by the wayside. It wasn't like slummy or poor. It just had nothing going for it. And so, the city developers got together and put together this plan and built a gorgeous stadium right in the middle of downtown for AAA baseball. Got a contract with the Padres, and they have the Padres AAA team now, and they came up with a new name. Well, they went, of course, typical El Paso fashion. They always put stuff to a vote, and of course, El Pasoans being El Pasoans, we always elect the most obvious thing, of course, and that would be Chihuahuas. So, but I mean, dude, I see people walking around everywhere with those hats. I mean, they market them pretty good, and I may not like the name, but it's doing really good. The stadium's gorgeous. They did a great job with it. The city did a really great job, and the team people have been going to games. Like a lot of my high school friends that are still living there, they go to games all the time, so they're getting really support, so it's good and everything. But anyway, total digress. When I was growing up, Budweiser was the beer on contract with it. And so, I remember watching all these games as a child, sitting next to my dad who always had a beer in hand, and that smell of Budweiser and the sips that he used to give me when I was, growing up.
That's the beer that I always remember drinking, too.
Yeah.
When I would have one sip of barbecue or whatever.
And so it has this natural feel for baseball, and as you guys know, I'm a huge baseball guy, and I promise no sports questions. So this is the last sports thing, but that's why Budweiser means so much to me. I'll drink it all the time. Won't drink Bud Light. I hate Miller Lite. Miller Lite's probably the only beer that I absolutely will not drink. If Miller Lite's available and it's either drink Miller Lite or nothing, I will drink nothing. I can't stand Miller Lite.
Really?
I can't do it, man.
To me, all the light beers are pretty much the same. Coors tastes more like water than the others. Miller tastes more like beer than the others. But that's about it.
I just every time commercial comes on for Miller Lite where they're like triple hops brewed, and I was like, yeah, and we dump a shit ton of water in it.
It's triple hops because they put one hop and then another one and then another one. They put 3 hops in every batch. Actually, Miller High Life might be my guilty pleasure. It's been a long time since I've had one, but anytime that there's cheap beer and they have that one, that's probably what I'm going with.
I will drink Miller High Life over Miller Lite.
And also, I do know there's one thing I know about baseball. It's that our minor league team that we got a couple years ago, that I think they're what is it called? Where they have an association with a major league team. I don't remember what it's called, but
what city are you in?
I'm in Portland, Oregon.
So it's
they're
I think
Seahawks.
It's the AAA affiliate. They're part of the International League, I believe, or excuse me, the Pacific Coast League, the PCL. And I
I
think it may be. I don't think it's Seattle. It might be Angels. I'm gonna look it up.
I don't know, but what I do know is the name, which is the Hillsborough Hops, which is a great name. Their mascot is a hop.
Yes, that's the way to go. Minor league teams know how to do it, man. They know how to have fun, and they have some crazy.
It's
names.
A farm team for the Diamondbacks.
Okay, actually. There you go.
So apparently we stole your team at some point.
No, you've been AAA. We were AA at the time.
Oh, okay.
So you're totally good. No, I mean, honestly, man, that stadium is falling apart. It was a disaster, so it's no big deal. So, guys, how's the pairing? How are you guys enjoying the cigar? Going with the beer?
One thing that I'm finding, we forgot to talk about the cigar. The cigar I'm getting a lot of like fruity sweetness from that reminds me of like red wine for some reason. I don't know why, but I'm getting a lot of sweetness from both in a good way, like a nice short finish kind of sweetness. Man, I can't figure out this sweetness from the cigar. It's really weird. At first, I was getting a lot of spice. Now it's kind of fallen back into more leathery, kind of creamy notes.
I was really excited.
Well, though.
I'm still very excited. I finished the beer. I'm kind of getting to the end of the cigar, but just the pairing itself was really exciting because I didn't have to think about it. That's the beauty of it. I sat down, I lit up the cigar, I poured the beer. I don't have to think about anything. It just happens. They're not fighting each other. The beer is nice and crisp. The cigar finish, like Tripp said, it's got that sweetness. Now it's warming up for me nicely. Really creamy, really cool. But from the first light to even to now, there's something about it that's really familiar to me, and I'm trying to like pinpoint, where it's from, the region. I suspect there's a large Dominican influence. I could be wrong completely.
I thought Nicaraguan at first, and then now I've switched over to thinking that it's Dominican.
So you were last time we did this, Dennis, and I wore this shirt specifically to tell you that it's not a La Aurora cigar because it was last time we did the La Aurora DNA, which was my,
did you so nailed that one, Dennis?
And Dennis nailed it. Yeah, he was like, "Yeah, I'm totally getting a little Andouille, bro." I'm like, like we're 2 seconds into the show. I'm like, "Well, throw the flag."
That never happens, and that really never happens. I'm so bad. My palate, normally when I sit down, finally have a chance to smoke, honestly, my palate's so jacked up because keep in mind, being sort of Eastern European, I end up eating a lot of weird stuff, throughout the day. So I may have like marinated herring, right? And then I'll sit down with a cigar that's really kind of elegant and nice. It just totally throws off everything that's going on in that cigar.
And you still got herring juice all over your palate, herring grease.
Well, in the mustache and it's the flavor saver.
I love me some pickled herring, man. Pickled herring, good. Absolutely. So like, okay, so Dennis, since you were the one that pegged it last time and everything, and then you said Tripp said he got a little Nicaraguan at first, but he's kind of coming around to where your mindset was. What has you thinking that it's got some Dominican influence?
Dude, it's I mean, and I'm trying to put this kind of to words, and it's always so hard to make sense of a sensation that you get, even if it's a memory. When you have a cigar, it's really tough to put words to it. And for me, I don't know, man, like dusty library books, like the smell.
I get a little bit of that too. That like weird funk.
It sounds bad, but really, I don't mean it in a bad way. But it reminds me of when I first got into cigars and I started exploring other brands out there, and I got into La Gloria, and I started smoking, a lot of different La Gloria cigars. And I don't know, I'm kind of leading in that direction. La Aurora did not pop into my head whatsoever.
Good, because it's not. So we're good.
But I don't know, man. And I know, especially for you, you always talk about just how much you love cigars across the entire spectrum. It's not just one region or one brand. You really kind of find something that you really enjoy in each of those. So with you, it could be anything. I wouldn't be surprised if it was La Gloria cigar.
I
think General's a good guess. Something from General.
Would you say in general? That's a good guess.
In general,
it's a good guess. I think that the one thing that I really like about this cigar is that I actually didn't like it at first, and it was actually specifically this Vitola that really turned me around. And then I tried another Vitola that I really enjoyed with it, and then another. But I started off smoking about 3 or 4 of. The reason I didn't like it is I smoked 3 or 4 of Vitola in this particular blend, and I just didn't like it. I didn't like the cigar. It just didn't hit my palate right and everything. and it was actually Jordan Gatormson of Cigar Dojo who suggested this Vitola to me, and since then I've absolutely loved the blend. It's been really fantastic. So I'm ready to do a reveal on it. If some great guesses. Anyone want to take a shot at it?
I'm going to stick with in general. I'm going to go with La Gloria. There was a little Fuente thing going on that I thought earlier on, but it sort of dropped out for me. I don't know. Tripp, what do you think?
I cannot figure out what it tastes like. It does remind me of something. I'm almost certain that it's something I've smoked before, but it's possible that it's not. But I can't pinpoint it. I can't figure it out.
Well,
the
I think
sweetness has me really curious in particular.
I think you guys are nailing everything about it. There is Dominican influence. There is some creaminess. You mentioned some leather notes, Tripp. I get that a lot off. There's a little bit of licorice on the finish as you kind of creep towards the back end of the cigar, and I think it really pairs well with this beer. And just because of the sweetness inherently, it matches. It's not like a contrast or a counter, but it matches in an odd sort of way. They don't have similar flavor components, but the sweetness and everything kind of. But this cigar is actually yes, very much Dominican influence. It's Davidoff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's the Escurio Corona Gorda.
Okay. So it is not a cigar that I've ever smoked before then, because that's one of the only Davidoff blends that I'd never had.
Oh, you've never had this cigar? Okay, fantastic.
No.
Well, wonderful. Well, so are you enjoying it now? Now that you can stop thinking about it a little bit.
See, the weird thing is, like, we talked about how there's a little bit of funk, like that old library book, but there's a similar flavor to that I always get from Davidoff's. I always describe it as mushroom, even though that's, it's just kind of a weird vegetal kind of flavor, vaguely earthy. I always describe it as mushroom, and I get none of that from this. Even the Yamasa and the other black labels, I'm used to getting that flavor. So I'm surprised that this one doesn't have it.
This is probably one of their most unique blends. I think the Yamasa is, as much as I really enjoy that blend, and it's unique in its makeup. The flavors and things, there's some similar components that I've had with other cigars and everything. This cigar to me is truly unique. It's got Brazilian tobacco in it, obviously. It's got an Ecuadorian wrapper. Now, for people who don't know, even though they may have tuned into a show from a couple weeks ago when I had Klaus Kellner on, we were talking about all their Ecuadorian tobacco actually comes from David Perez, who grows tobacco for them in Ecuador. I'm sure he grows for other people. I don't think there's an exclusivity on it, but every single type of Ecuadorian tobacco that comes out of Ecuador, so their sun-growns, their habanos, their varietals, all those different stuff, all come from David Perez. So he shows a really nice talent for being able to do a lot of different things with that soil down there and different seeds and stuff. So it's pretty fantastic.
Man, I'm surprised that there's no way I would have pegged this as a Davidoff. One reason is because I was noticing the construction compared to the others, and it's just kind of bumpier. It's not that it's like bad construction, but it's just got that kind of like where the binder seems really veiny. So you have those like underlying bumps and divots in the wrapper. I didn't expect that from Davidoff.
It's like I said, it's a really unique blend. It's a slow burn. That wrapper makes it a really nice slow burning cigar. There isn't that quintessential long flawless ash that comes with a lot of, particularly their signature white label stuff. I mean, it's still a good it's a well constructed cigar. It still draws well. And it still holds together, obviously, but that quintessential, very flawless white peppered ash that can go on for miles typically isn't with this particular cigar. But I really enjoy the smoke. I really enjoy it with this beer.
I like it, and I think the pairing, you nailed it, dude.
I'm loving it. Like this is something. If I had more access to this beer, this would be a regular thing for me. If I just wanted to sit down and relax and not have to worry about anything, this would be a go-to pairing.
If it if it wasn't so expensive to ship some of these packages, man, I'd get more of these beers out to you guys. So
Just have to fly to Texas, man.
There you go.
y'all
The only option.
are welcome. Y'all are welcome anytime. Absolutely. So I'm ready to start up the next pairing, guys. If
right.
y'all are.
Yeah,
So.
I say we go for it, and then that way we can circle back later if we want to.
All right. So I think we definitely need to go with Trips next, because for everyone who's tuning in, Denis's beer is interesting. We'll just leave it at that.
It sounds interesting. That's the best way to put it for now.
So I'm lighting up Tripp cigar here, and then he of course has Tripp. Do you want me to go ahead and introduce your beer and you kind of roll with it from here?
Sure.
Okay, so I don't know anything about this brewery, so I'm going to try not to butcher it. But it's the Bobtoberfest from Heater Allen Brewing Company, and it's an Oktoberfest lager, crafted in McMinnville, Oregon, celebrating the life of Bob Allen, brother, teacher, brewer, and friend. So go ahead, Tripp. Why don't you take it away?
Sure. So this is, like you said, from Heater Allen. They're in McMinnville, which is about 45 minutes west of Portland. It's owned by Rick Allen. He was I've never heard of his wine before, but he was apparently a huge deal in the wine industry here in the Willamette Valley. He got into home brewing, and his wife said, you should probably start making beer and selling it so that you can make money off of this. So he named the brewery Heater Allen after his last name, Allen, and his wife's maiden name, for some reason, Heater. I don't understand why exactly you would do that. I think it was just because she kind of influenced him a little bit. It was founded in 2007. I forgot to mention his winemaking career started way before that. I think it was in the late 80s, or it might have been the mid 90s. In 2010, his daughter, Lisa Allen, after going to college for a couple of different things and working in a couple of different industries, she decided to join the family business and became the head brewer. So she's the one who's heading up the operation now, which is always kind of cool. They focus on lagers. There was a time where they only made lagers. They branched out into a whopping 3 ales, which are not the ones you would expect. Let me pull up their ales. They're all seasonal. They've got a Kolsch, a Bavarian style wheat, and an alt beer. So they actually do not have an IPA at all. They really focus on kind of the more European style, specifically, like I said, with lagers. Their regular beers are, of course, all lagers. They've got a Pils, a Schwartz, and a Dunkel.
I love Dunkels, man.
It's a good Dunkel too. The one unfortunate thing, I guess, is the limited availability. I mean, they only started canning within the last year. Before that, the only place you could really get their beer was at their brewery. And then they had, I think it was their Pilsner, that they would bottle in 22-ounce bombers. That was the only way you could get any beer from them. They're starting to branch out a little bit. Hopefully they'll get a little bit bigger at some point soon. This is, like you said, Bobtoberfest. A thing that I find interesting is they don't mention it on the can. I don't remember exactly what they say, but they say like it's a tribute to. Oh no, they do say that it was his brother, who was one of the people. It was Rick's brother, the owner of the brewery, who kind of got him into home brewing. He was one of the people that showed him how to home brew and, helped him set up equipment and stuff like that and figure out how to brew his first batches of beer, because it was something he'd done before. And I think it also says on here that he passed away a few years ago, but it doesn't say when. But anyway, this is their version of a Oktoberfest beer as the U.S. knows it. They kind of say on their website in the description that Oktoberfest isn't really a Marzen. That's changed in like the last 20 years, but to the U.S., Marzen is still the typical style for an Oktoberfest. It's kind of a darker red kind of lager, more intense usually than a Pilsner, a little bit more sweetness, a little bit more bitterness, a little bit more body. Yeah, that's about it. I do have the details here somewhere, but I lost them.
Man, look at how clean this beer is. I poured this out and I can see through it. I mean, it is clean.
You know what's crazy about that? They do not filter any of their beers.
That's freaking nuts. That's insane. That's bullshit. That's crazy, man. Oh my gosh.
Oh, here it is. 6.1% ABV, 24 IBUs.
And I was so excited that you did an Oktoberfest trip because I was going to, but I knew that I wanted to do that cigar, and I really love pairing it with the allergies, and it was just so totally perfect because of how this our tradition started the first go around, and the fact I love the beer, and the fact that it was weird, and everything clicked into place with that. So. But I was so glad that one of us did an Oktoberfest. I love Marzen beers. I love Oktoberfest beers. And I'm really enjoying this one so far.
I think this is a fantastic version of a Marzen. It's kind of northwestified a little bit with a little bit of extra hops, but it's not bitey. It's got a little bit more of that bitterness, but it doesn't have like the astringency or the hop, like the kind of palate bite that you get from an intense IPA.
What about you, Dennis? Do you like Oktoberfests?
I mean, so it's tough for me because I pretty much, when it comes to Oktoberfest, I get into full fanboy mode and kind of like everything that's out. And I can't sit still and drink the same beer all night. If I go to an event, I want to try every single beer at least once if I can, and twice sometimes, depending on, if they have the half-liter Steins. A lot of times my first beer ends up being a liter. So by the time I get through that, move on to my next beer. I end up kind of sticking to a lot of the Dunkel stuff as well if it's around. Generally, it's tough now because in the U.S. we've seen this sort of kind of a meshing of flavors from the traditional to now this sort of Americanized version of what Oktoberfest is. So it could be anything. Macro and microbreweries that are producing beers, they call them Oktoberfest beers. It could be anything from like a classic lager to a Dunkel or a Marzen or somewhere in between. So you don't know until you try it.
The thing I love about Oktoberfest beers is that I tend to kind of stay true to them in the season that they're in. And Tripp and I were joking about this off air before, the fact that it is Oktoberfest season, and most people are like, "What are you talking about? They're those overzealous capitalists trying to make a buck." It turns September 1st, and they're already selling pumpkin spice and Oktoberfest. And well, here's the thing, guys. The name is a little misleading. Yes, it is called Oktoberfest. That was the original name of it. That is the name that holds true to the festival today, and we have hundreds, if not thousands, of Oktoberfests celebrated around the world, but of course most famously in Munich, Germany. But the truth of the matter is Oktoberfest truly and always is in September.
Always. Typically like the first or second week. So we're in Oktoberfest pretty much right now. Oktoberfest is more about the end of summer and welcoming in the beginning of fall.
Yes.
And I mean, to me, Marzens are kind of a perfect beer for that.
Exactly, 100%. See, this is the trend that should catch fire. They should do Oktoberfest granola bars, and Oktoberfest cereal, and Oktoberfest fucking lattes.
Dude, I'd be down for that.
And instead of this pumpkin spice, Dennis, I'm sorry to trample on your guilty pleasure, man, but seriously,
it's a once in a while thing, and I think it's kind of weird. It's sort of for me. It kind of turned into what you mentioned with. For you with Budweiser and that kind of that weird nostalgia thing. For some reason, I don't know what it is, but for years, this whole pumpkin trend, pumpkin everything, as it started over the last 10 years to really grow and turn into a real thing. Seeing that evolution, being kind of part of it one way or another, even if I didn't partake, it's a seasonal thing. I feel that itch every time it comes around and I start seeing the pumpkin spice stuff. I got to try it out of curiosity. Most of the time it's terrible. I've tried donuts that are horrible. I've tried like pumpkin spice butters. I'm trying to think of some of the weirder things that I've tried. Chocolates, pumpkin spice chocolates.
See, pumpkin spice butter makes sense to me because, like, okay, first of all, let's just disabuse people of the notion that the fact that there is something called pumpkin spice, because there is not a spice called pumpkin spice.
Yes.
Pumpkin spice is made up of several different spices, namely spices that you use in a lot of baking in general anyways. You're talking about your gingers, you're talking about your cinnamons, your clove, your nutmeg. Like, so all that in a butter on like some pancakes or French toast, that sounds awesome. I could do that. But the idea of, like, you know, just pumpkin spice everything is just, man, it's reached, I mean, at least when the Chipotle pepper craze was going around, at least that was something that I could like really enjoy. And it's like, okay, you're just adding spice to something, a different spice component. Yeah, it was overdone, but man, pumpkin spice spam, they crossed the line there. I mean,
yeah, I think it's a little bit too much. And speaking of Chipotle, I remember when the sriracha craze came around and it was sriracha everything.
Right.
And it kind of ruined my love for sriracha, because I remember before it was cool. I was there before it was cool, man.
You had the Rooster T-shirt and everything, man. I mean, you were rocking it out, right?
Well, that was the thing. I like a lot of other people, I love this stuff. I put it on everything, but I never had that urge to go and like get a tattoo of the rooster or get a T-shirt with the rooster or buy like a weird keychain of it. It was never a pop culture thing. It was more of it's there. It's like you go into a bar or a restaurant, right, that serves food, and you see Tabasco on the table. It's just Tabasco. You don't really think about it.
Right.
Or Texas Pete or something like that.
Yeah, that's the thing that's weird to me, is that it became like a pop culture thing, and it's like, it's just a condiment. Like, you don't see people walking around like with a Heinz ketchup shirt.
No, that's a thing now. There are.
Yeah.
I guess it probably is.
I'm sure there's some people. The thing about sriracha that I mean, I enjoy it too, but it's one of those things that, and just kind of like what we're talking about with the pumpkin spice, is like, the thing that's overdone about sriracha isn't the fact that it's used. Sriracha is great, but it's that it's overused. And I'm not talking about overused in the sense of that it's on everything. I'm saying too much of it.
Yeah.
And like, it's a very, very it's a very flavorful, spicy, but it can just overwhelm and dominate the palate. And so therefore it kind of loses its complementary, essence.
Well, I mean, that's the main thing, is that it intended to be complimentary. Like, no matter how much of it you put on your food, you're still tasting your food. When you have a chip that just tastes like sriracha, like, just squirt sriracha on your chip. Why do you need to make everything taste like sriracha when it's the thing you can just add to stuff?
Exactly.
Yeah. That's like the trend in the U.S. We started to see. I think it was, who released it? Lay's, or one of the major chip companies. They started making all dressed chips.
The all dressed. Then that's some good stuff, though. The chips are good.
They're fantastic, but it doesn't need to be turned into some kind of crazy fanatic pop culture thing. Like, people in Canada have been eating that for years, just like people in Europe have been eating chips that, you buy a bag of chips at a bar in Europe, in most countries, like Central and Eastern Europe, you see it's, I guess they call them ham and cheese chips, which sounds weird, but that's like their version of barbecue chips.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, no, absolutely. I've seen it before. I think I kind of do like this Lay's competition that goes on. I think it's around this time of year where they like release crazy. Did you guys try the biscuits and gravy?
I never did.
God, they were good.
They were that good?
They were really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But speaking of spice, if you sprinkle a little Tabasco on it, it's like breakfast, and it's in a potato chip form and texture, and it was just.
That sounds delicious.
It was glorious. It was
I should have bought a couple bags. It's probably still around somewhere.
Yeah, you can find them, I think. But to go back to Oktoberfest, because I have some fun facts about Oktoberfest that I think are pretty cool. So, or at least interesting. So, look, we already talked about the fact that, even though it bears the name of October, it actually is this time of year. It's in September, usually the first and second week. Even though, and people are actually catching on to that. You see a lot more Oktoberfest in the country. Like yeah, people are catching on to the more fact in the festivals here in this country. They're all here. Look, ones here in Texas. Addison, Texas, does a really great Oktoberfest. McKinney, Texas, does a great Oktoberfest. They're in late September, so they're kind of catching on. I think the fact that they're playing on people's stupidity and ignorance, and they don't want to lose people, so they're just like, we'll get it close enough to October, so the ignorant people will actually, still come.
I'm gonna see where ours, when ours is, because we have one that's one of the let me see. They've been going. This is their 54th year doing Oktoberfest. In this place called Mount Angel, Oregon, where it's kind of got like a couple of old German buildings that they do it around. They do it the 12th through the 15th, exactly when you should.
There you go. Beautiful. Beautiful. Two things Oregon got right: Tripp and Oktoberfest. Fantastic. Well, we'll lump your entire family in there. Tripp's family and Oktoberfest. That's two things Oregon got right. And beer, Oregon.
I was going to say beer too.
Yeah, Oregon definitely gets the ticket on beer, man. They've put out some really fantastic stuff over the years and through the craft beer craze and everything. So another great thing about Oktoberfest too. So Oktoberfest, the very first one was actually in the year 1810. Okay.
Wow.
So, and it was actually not a festival celebrating beer. It wasn't even a festival. It was actually it was honor of a marriage. Okay. So I'm going to do my best. My wife is German, so I'm going to do my best not to slaughter this. But it was the marriage of Prince Ludwig and Teresa of Saxe-Hildenbergenhausen.
That was good.
Sounds close enough to me.
Fantastic. I like.
So in 1810, they got married, and so that was the marking of the first Oktoberfest. So in 200 years, so if you think about it, so it's been over 200 years of Oktoberfest that have been celebrated specifically in Germany, but around the world now. It's become a world craze. But in 200 years, the original Oktoberfest in Germany has only been canceled 24 times.
That's a pretty good record.
That's a good run,
especially when they were involved in several very long world wars.
So again, the two main reasons why they've been canceled 24 times: outbreak of cholera and war. Yep. Those are the only reasons why Oktoberfest doesn't occur.
Both very good reasons to cancel a party.
Yeah, exactly. So what's also interesting about it is that despite the fact that it has like this international allure, a vast majority, number estimates in the late 60s to early 70 percentile are local. Attendees are local, actually. So it's still very popular for local people. So it's not like, if your area is known for something and, it brings in all the tourists and like none of the natives and locals go. Yeah. Oktoberfest is not like that. Apparently Oktoberfest is very
interesting. I would have assumed it was mostly tourists that went to Oktoberfest.
Well, it's like how many Belgians are actually eating stroopwafels every week, right? That's
we know a couple. We should ask them.
Yes.
Are you talking about Jean-Michel Louis of Saga Cigars?
Of course.
He's French.
That's
French. He's not Belgian. I hope he's watching. I hope he's listening. This is.
Me too.
I bring it up every time, and he's just like, he
will appear at your house in your sleep to tell you.
Yes,
it's true.
In that glorious accent, though, and that wonderful mustache. I mean,
he's so captivating. The dude. Every time I see him, I can't help but think that he would play such a great role as a villain in an 80s action movie. He wouldn't even have to speak. He'd have one word, maybe, the whole movie, and it'd just be perfect.
The only thing that I have against Jean-Michel playing a villain is that he seems to be always happy. And like someone that joyous obviously can't be that evil unless it's like, you know, just unless he's just absolutely this a sociopath.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe he's like the Joker, where he's always happy no matter what's happening.
Well, that's what makes him such a valuable character. I think when you have a villain who's always happy, well, man, that one time when he's not happy, you really don't want to cross his path.
It's like the Heath Ledger's character in The Dark Knight. Do you want me to tell you how I got my mustache instead of? Do you want me to tell you how I got my scars? So a couple other cool things about Oktoberfest that I just found out. Just kind of found out, and I've actually known the last point for a long time. It was a really interesting bit for me. But Adidas actually recently released a vomit-proof sneaker.
Oh yes, I did hear about that.
That was very cool.
And to me, I mean, brilliant marketing on Adidas's part. You gotta hand it to them for that. You know, the fact that they are a German company, if I'm not mistaken. So that totally makes sense that they would put effort into this type of a marketing campaign. But it's really quite brilliant and everything. But I kind of want to see what it looks like, and I'm tempted, unless it's just like an obnoxious price point, I'm almost tempted to buy them.
I think it's 200 euros, something in that range.
That might be a little bit on the obnoxious side for me.
Also sold out, so you're gonna have to deal with secondary market
pricing. Damn!
Pricing.
Oh man, gosh.
Which means they're probably going to be $1,000.
Oh,
they look nice though. It looks cool. I'm not really like a sneaker fanboy or anything like that, but I certainly wouldn't pay that price. And if I did, I wouldn't want to wear them or anything like that. But, you know, for maybe like $80-$90, maybe I'd buy them.
It's like the people that go and buy like the latest PlayStation or Xbox 360 or whatever version of it is. And they'll go and they'll buy it for the $200-$300. I want to meet the idiots that buy it on the secondary market when it first gets released
for like $1,000.
For $1,000.
Yeah.
And just be like, listen, man, I'm not trying to pass judgment on you, but I am passing judgment on you. What the hell are you thinking? Why? Why?
So I will jump in and give some, if you want to play with the secondary market, I'm going to jump in and give some investor advice to you guys and whoever's watching and listening. Have you guys been to a convenience store recently over the last couple of weeks and looked at some of the new Mountain Dew stuff? Have you noticed there's a new Mountain Dew product?
Oh no.
It's limited, some kind of limited release, right? It's the mystery flavor.
Oh.
It's got this really cool Halloween-y kind of label to it. It's not pumpkin spice. I thought it was, which would have been brilliant if it was. However, I bought it like over the weekend, and I tried it, and it is phenomenal. It tastes exactly like Skittles.
I mean, isn't the mystery flavor of stuff like that almost always just a mix of every flavor they make?
Yeah, sometimes it could be, but after trying it, as nice as it was, to my surprise, I suspect once it's off the market, the secondary market's going to explode. There are going to be guys buying it left and right for $50 a bottle. That always happens.
I think the crazy thing about with that, like the mystery flavor sodas and stuff, like I just remember them tasting like that, exactly, Tripp. But I'm like, we did that as kids, guys. It was called Pizza Hut or Peter Piper Pizza. We just go through and just go
hit everyone,
hit every piece of soda and go run around in the ball pit, which was actually cool. They're getting rid of ball pits now because of sanitary stuff. Because like kids, our kids are never going to have fun, Tripp. Like I'm thoroughly convinced that our kids are never going to enjoy life, but yet here we are raising them. So we gotta find something. So we create our own ball pits and we buy those kiddie pools at like Walmart and we fill them with balls and they get to experience it nonetheless.
We did that too.
So the vomit-proof sneaker was a cool little bit about Oktoberfest. The other thing I really enjoyed hearing about was actually the fact that the Oktoberfest actually doesn't officially start until the mayor actually taps the very first keg.
Really?
So yeah,
that's interesting.
So he taps the very first keg and declares that the basically open to the games, open to Oktoberfest, and that's the beginning of the actual festival. which is a pretty cool honor, man. If you're ever, I mean, I gotta be honest, like that would probably be the thing that I would look forward to most if I was elected to political office in Munich. Be like, hey, so when making sure that I have no plans whatsoever during that time during September, so that I can be there to tap the keg and declare open to Oktoberfest and enjoy a good stein of some good beer. This is really
that does
good
sound
stuff.
awesome.
This is good stuff, man. And this is a great pairing.
You think so? I'm glad you like it.
I'm really enjoying this. I think I've got the cigar nailed, but I don't want to spoil too much because I got one last Oktoberfest tidbit. But so the last
a celebrity, just curious.
What's that?
Does the last tidbit involve a celebrity?
Yes, it does.
Crap. Okay. Good. I mean, I'm glad you got that one because that for me
Dennis almost
is
had
the
his
most,
own tidbit.
It's the most ridiculous and fun thing.
Unless, I mean, it could involve another celebrity. So if you but okay, so is it Albert Einstein?
No, it's actually not.
Okay, so yeah, so you can tell your. So mine is Albert Einstein actually worked at Oktoberfest.
Oh,
imagine like living in the late 30s, mid 30s, and getting a beer at Oktoberfest, and then like 10 years later, you see the newspaper. This guy created the atomic bomb, and you're like, I feel like I've seen that guy. Oh, he was the guy that gave me that boot full of beer.
It was way earlier than the 30s, Tripp. So 1896.
Whoa.
Yeah, Albert Einstein worked as an electrician, and he helped set up the beer tents in 1896.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's pretty badass.
Yes. Yeah.
I could see Einstein chastising me for packing my pipe wrong or something like that. They're like, smoking that real funky fruited pipe tobacco that was starting to make its way around the early 1900s. Instead of smoking that real aged stuff.
That's something you bring up a funny point, Dennis. I think the thing that I wonder about, we hear, all of us are young enough that we actually didn't experience the cigar boom of the 90s from a smoker standpoint. We were all live, but we weren't smoking cigars during the cigar boom. I
actually do think, I was thinking recently, I think that actually contributed to my interest in cigars. Because, I don't know, to me, cigars were just always a cool thing. And it started, like, a few weeks ago, I was like, I wonder if I always thought cigars were cool because of Arnold and all of the other celebrities that were smoking cigars at that time.
People ask me about that all the time, Tripp, and I always tell them I don't know the genesis of it. I just remember about the age that I was at, which was about that time, but 10, 12 years old. I was a very, I lived life as a very, youth as a very straight edge kid. I really didn't rebel. I really didn't do much. I never drank before I was 21. I didn't do anything crazy. But I always wanted to smoke a cigar. I always had this desire. Never wanted to smoke a cigarette. Never wanted to do anything else. I always had this desire to smoke a cigar. And, on my 18th birthday, I smoked one, and I fell in love with it instantly. And here I am. Fellow cigar media member Matt Ty claims that he's young enough that he actually was smoking during the cigar, or he's old enough that he actually was smoking.
32. That guy's definitely 32.
Yeah, he says he's like in his 40s, and I'm just like, dude, no. He says he has like kids in college age. Like, no, dude, it's all a ruse. He's our age, maybe even younger.
Oh, he's younger for sure.
Yeah. God, Matt, we love you for who you are. You don't have to lie about your age. Okay. Just saying. So what celebrity was your tidbit involving, Dennis? I think we lost him there for a second.
Dennis has died.
So Dennis, are you back?
Yeah, dude. Sorry about that, guys. My internet kind of shit the bed for a second there.
It's all
crapped
good.
on out.
I had to change the bedpan, so now I'm on a totally different network. So yeah.
So what was your celebrity, Dennis?
Paris Hilton. Hilton is officially banned from attending Oktoberfest. This is the thing. She showed up, and this is crazy. She showed up in this most ridiculous Bavarian, like, I think it's called a drindle, right? The dress.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She showed up in a drindle, but like Paris Hilton fashion, which is just flashy as all hell. And she was there promoting, I think it was, I want to say it was like a wine, like an up-and-coming wine company or something like that, like something trendy. And people were outraged when they saw her because they felt that it was really disrespectful and she was ridiculously dressed. And they actually had her formally banned.
That's awesome.
That's so cool.
That just,
I'm
married
imagine
to
being that asshole that gets banned from Oktoberfest where everybody's an asshole anyway.
I'm married to a German, and that just makes me love Germans more.
Oh yeah, they don't care, man. You don't mess with a German's tradition. You can't.
No.
Yeah.
Or anyone's tradition for that matter, I guess.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the wine bit because they actually do have one. Okay, so they have on average, Oktoberfest has ranges from about, I think it's 34 to 40 huge beer hall tents, right? Huge. I mean, just massive, massive tents that are these beer hall style tents that are beer. They have one dedicated to wine and champagne.
For all the
One,
nerds.
yeah, I know, dude. Just burn that motherfucker to the ground. the guys and gals that go into that, like, what are you doing? You're in Oktoberfest. Like, the phrase "when in Rome" is so applicable to Oktoberfest. Why would you go to drink wine? Like, what is wrong with you?
You can't explain that.
No,
I don't know.
Seriously. These are the people that show up to a coffee shop and are like, "I'll have the Earl Grey, please."
Yeah.
Go to hell.
So what are we thinking about the cigar and the beer? Dennis, you haven't really weighed in.
You're killing me, man. The pairing, just to talk about the pairing quickly, I really dig the beer. I'm always a fan of this style, and any chance to kind of experience someone else's take on an Oktoberfest is really cool for me. It works really well with the cigar. I've been trying to figure this cigar out since before I lit it because I noticed something in the beer. I don't know if you noticed as well, something about the foot that was kind of different.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally have this cigar nailed. I know what it is.
Do you?
And oh, dude, I'm gonna let you go because I'm.
No. Keep rolling.
No, I think Dennis needs to go first.
I feel like I know this cigar, and I'm gonna probably kick myself in the ass when you tell us what it is. But it reminds me. I'm trying to remember, man. And we talked about this at the trade show, which, as anyone who's been knows or who's listened and kind of read all the stories, it's a couple of days, but it's really one long day. You lose track of time. You don't know what's going on. You just kind of exist in this weird kind of space-time continuum during the.
I mean, that's just Vegas, baby. Vegas is a time vortex.
Vegas, the multiplier of the Vegas vortex, makes you feel like you're in the Matrix, and then you add cigars on top of that, right? So it's a lot of nicotine, a lot of caffeine, a lot of alcohol, generally speaking, for those of us that do drink.
I had a problem finding caffeine this year, but that's another story. We'll get into that.
It can be really hard sometimes.
Dude, I had
that's what you do. Day one, you clock a booth that's got caffeine, that's got an espresso machine. That's what I've done every year that I go. The first day, I hit a booth and they're like, "Do you want coffee?" And then I gladly accept a coffee, and I said, and then I always think like, all right, I'm gonna ask if I can come back for more coffee later, and they go, "If you ever need coffee, stop by right here."
Well, what you do is you drop a pin on your Google Maps so you know where to go every time.
And then every morning you go by and you're like, all right, coffee. Give me.
Or you text your resident caffeine dealer, which is me, and I at any given time I had about 4 or 5 grams of caffeine on me in various form.
Yeah, you saved me one day. Heather Callahan at Royal Agio saved me one morning at the event. She dealt me an espresso, and then she saw that wasn't doing the trick, so she gave me another, and it just, oh god, man.
We went last year, year before last, we were at the Warped booth, and Kyle had his Delirio coffee, and I thought it was incredible, and I told him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, if you ever need coffee, come by." So the last year, when we came by, I was like, "Bro, I gotta have some of that coffee." And he gave us some coffee, and he was like, "If you ever need coffee, come by." So on the last day, like we were dying. I think that night we stayed up. That was the night we stayed up until like 5 or something like that.
At the media
And
compound, or was this?
yeah, I think that was at the media compound last year when those people were there. Lots of people. But anyway,
The people.
like we go by the booth and Kyle's not there, so there's just a random guy working the booth, and I'm like, "Can we just have 4 shots of espresso, please?" And he's like, "Who the fuck are you guys?" Like, Kyle said we could have coffee, and he's like, "Okay, no problem."
Nice.
I thought we were gonna get shut down there.
This year, Saga had some great coffee.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, you're delaying the inevitable, Dennis. What do you think the cigar is?
I'm embarrassed because I can't remember. It's such a blur. I sincerely cannot remember who does the weird foot thing, and I'm leaning on Skip, but I'm thinking that, you know, Skip's not the only one. He's got some interesting stuff that he does for stamp of, you know, validity, so to speak, that they like to do that's kind of unique to them. But I don't know, man. I'm gonna pin it on Romacraft, but maybe not. It's a solid construction, solid burn. It has those characteristics of a classic Romacraft stick, but at the same time, I'm leaning on maybe it's not. It could be something else.
You don't have a more specific guess?
I'll totally go out on a limb because I know what it is.
Go for it.
And I'm so confident I'm going to be wrong.
I'll be a little surprised if you don't know what it is.
It's no, Dennis, you got to follow your gut, brother. It's Skip Martin, and it's more than just Skip Martin. It's very specifically the intemperance, and it's a BA. It is the Brazilian Arapiraca wrapper, Indonesian binder, Nicaraguan filler. And it's pairing beautifully with this beer. Tell me I'm wrong.
It's actually the Whiskey Rebellion.
It is the Whiskey Rebellion, son of a bitch. I knew it. Oh.
See, that's why I want Whiskey Rebellion. I knew you guys were going to clock the foot, but I thought there was almost no chance that you'd realize that it was actually the Ecuadorian Habano wrapper.
Gosh, man. It's so
especially because it's so hard to tell the difference between the Brazilian Arapiraca and the Habano.
Well, yeah, and I think here's where I got hung up on this. The sweetness of the Marzen kind of tricked my mind with the wrapper and everything of the cigar, and so I thought I was like, okay, it could be the Whiskey Rebellion, it could be the BA, and so I think that's where I got messed up on it. But yeah, no, really well done, Tripp. It's phenomenal. I love the Whiskey Rebellion too. The Hamilton is my jam. I love that size.
For me, I'm a Romacraft fanboy, self-admittedly. The Whiskey Rebellion, for me, the first time I smoked it, the first probably 2 or 3 times I smoked it, I was just like, there's something flat about this. And I couldn't identify what it was. It just tasted a little flatter than I'm expecting from Romacraft stuff, even like compared to the Intemperance Connecticut. But then I started pairing it with stuff, and pairing it with a whiskey or a beer or a scotch or what have you. As long as you've got something that's got a little bit of that competing flavor and a little bit of sweetness to it, I feel like it really brings out a lot of spice and a little bit of like that earthy leather kind of note as well.
Oh, man. Well done. Absolutely well done, Tripp. This is great pairing. I totally agree with everything you just said. It's fantastic. Really well done.
Awesome. You almost got it. Almost got it there. Man. And Dennis, I thought I had him going because he was like, I don't think it's Romacraft, but I think it's the other company that does that. And I kept trying to lead him on.
Oh man. Well, now I'm stuck on it because I'm thinking who else does it?
The other person that does it, they don't actually do the part where you cut the foot, which I thought about just lopping the foot off, but I thought that would be too obvious that I chopped the cigar in half.
Oh, absolutely.
But the other person that does it is actually Raul Disla. And it's not actually the cutting of the tobacco with the foot. It's that they put another wrap under the wrapper to keep it from expanding as much. And that's done at the Nakasa factory, which is where the Mikarita and a couple of the other Saka sticks are made.
Wow. Man.
Thank you.
Went on the limb. It
was a valiant effort.
All right. So going to get into our third and final pairing tonight. I'm cutting Denis's cigar, and I'm preparing myself mentally for this beer. But before I do, I definitely want to, again, thank you guys for joining us tonight. This has been a really, really popular show that we've done here on ELOSOFUMARTAKES, the couple of times that we've done it. And so really excited to bring you all back and have a little fun with it. So I wanted to introduce a little bit more of a fun element. We talk about the cigars, we talk about the beer. And as you guys are lighting up Denis's cigar, which is a little bit longer than the two that we have previously provided, with the Corona Gorda from Davidoff Escurio and now the Whiskey Rebellion. That is no, it's not the McFarland. What size is that? It's not the Bradford.
I have it here. It's the Jefferson, 4.5 by 52.
Yeah. So
it's the Jefferson, actually.
The Jefferson. It's a soft J. I can't believe I'm about to drink this beer, especially the descriptor on it. This is crazy. But I wanted to introduce.
I feel like we got to talk about this beer before I even drink it.
Okay, so okay, we'll go into my shenanigans here, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Tripp.
We got to at least introduce it,
so
that people can understand what we're about to put in.
People are like, what are you drinking? Yeah, Denis, man, your honor, brother. Take us away.
Well, I'll have you know that really what you're about to drink is actually a rebranded Four Loko that I switched the outer label on, just so you know.
It's Budweiser, right? It's Budweiser, yeah.
It's Budweiser with a little glitter in there, and some lactose to make it real special.
Oh, glitter! Oh, Jesus!
It's Paris Hilton of beer, let me tell you. So this is a brewery that when I first moved to New Jersey, I started exploring breweries near me, and these guys are about 20 minutes from me, 20 minutes south. And I've spent a lot of time at this brewery kind of exploring what they have. And I've seen that evolution. When I first came to Jersey, they really had a small operation going. Since then, they've expanded. They've built a second kind of brew house. The first brew house has now turned into a kind of experimental project house and also a sour house for them. So they have what's the word? Firkin? Is that the word?
Oh yeah.
Firkin? Yeah. One or two Firkin.
I believe it's Merkin.
So they're doing that stuff out there. They're doing some crazy sour stuff and playing around with different things. But the brewery is Carden Brewing in Jersey, and they've kind of been I don't know, man. They've been experiencing an interesting kind of boom, I guess, over the last year especially. And this is one of their beers that kind of threw me off. I didn't know what to expect.
You don't say.
I mean, I want to say that I've had several bizarre beers from this company.
Yes.
That they are beers. I can't remember exactly what it was. There's two of them that I've had that on the can, it sounds like this is going to be awful. But they've never let me down. So I think one of them was like a Reuben or something. It was some kind of sandwich.
Oh my God.
Oh, I've never had that one. I've always wanted to try it. They did it for the Experimental Beer Festival that happens. I think it's in Massachusetts somewhere. I never had a chance to try that one. But I did bring a growler down to Nicaragua when we were at Drew Estate visiting. That was the
this is one of the other ones.
Swisher Peach, I think, something like that.
Peach Swisher.
Which sounds horrible.
The crazy thing is it tastes exactly like a peach-flavored 40-cent cigar. But the thing that doesn't make sense is that it also tastes good.
Yes. It was really strange, and I think it was a kind of an appropriate thing to bring down there, especially because it was
right after the acquisition.
Right after, man. And so it was kind of fresh in everyone's minds, and it was fun. Everyone that had a chance to try it seemed to at least enjoy just the experience of being able to try something different. Some people really like the beer as well, which I was surprised, and I also liked it. This one, though, I have to say is odd. And when I see an odd beer, I always wonder, because one of two things is going to happen. Either it's going to be completely horrible, right? You go into a weird beer kind of expecting it to be really bad anyway.
Low bar of expectation.
Right. You set the bar low because you don't know what to expect, especially if it has kind of strange adjuncts. Like there was a brewery in Philly that had I think it was like this, was it the second season of Walking Dead? I haven't really followed the show, but they did it was a red ale with goat brain, I believe. Something like that. And they did a season premiere party at the brewery with some weird stuff. So when you go into something like that, you kind of think, okay, fine, it's going to be, if nothing else, I've tried something weird. It's interesting, but it's probably going to be awful.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. But once in a while, you find something that's really kind of weird and cool and opens up your palate in a different way. This is what happened in the U.S. with Gosa styles, where initially people didn't want to try salty anything. They said salt and beer, they shouldn't go together. It's not going to work. And then you make it sour, it's definitely not going to work. And it started to take, pick up pace a little bit and take some traction. So this is a salty, kind of a weird salty beer brewed with clam shells. It has salt in it. It has a good bit of hop character to it, but it's kind of one of those, it's a pale ale. And they added lemongrass because they wanted to get that, as they put it, they wanted to get that steam pot, like a clam steam pot kind of essence to it. I've had it with a couple of cigars, and I've had it with this cigar that we're smoking tonight. And it's different. I don't know where I sit with this because I tend to require kind of 3 or 4 individual pairings to really get a feel for it. I'm curious to see what you guys think. The clam thing really is very interesting. It's not clear whether or not they use the actual meat of the clam, but definitely the clam shells do go into the brew.
I just want to say a special thanks to that. While Oktoberfest might signal the end of summer, that I do live in Texas, and it's still 100 degrees outside at 11:15 at night. And so I've got a fan on. It's
never the end of summer.
It's never the end of summer. So the fact that Denis has taken it a little easy on us tonight with this 3.8% beer, hats off to you, sir. You are the real MVP.
This is only 3.8%.
3.8%. I gotta say, when I saw this, Denis, I just was. I'm game. I'm game for anything, man. I really am. For the most part. But I was like, this is some weird shit. Like, there's no other way to say it. The clamshells, lemongrass. When you think about those things in terms of cuisine, it's like, okay, that makes sense. You add beer to the mix, and it's a little bit different. But Tripp, I don't mean to steal the spotlight here, but I'm actually enjoying this beer.
I'm really impressed with it too. Like I said, I've had some weird beers from this place. So they're one of their, the one that I heard of them because of is their, what is it called? Regular coffee. It's a coffee infused cream ale, coffee infused imperial cream ale, which seems like an insane combination already, but it's amazing. They've got all of these bizarre variants. One of the variants that I had that I was like, there's no way this could be good. I had to think of it. It was the Cafe Ichiro, which is like, it tastes like cream ale with coffee with cinnamon and sugar. Yeah. And it like, how can that even taste good? Somehow it's amazing. I feel like really their whole thing is like making beers that shouldn't taste good.
That's kind of part of it. I think they really don't market it. Some breweries out there really try to market the experimental weird side of things. They don't really do that. Oh, excuse me. Part of that series, they had a German one as well, which is like a German cake.
Yeah, I had that one as well. The German chocolate cake, which again, coffee and chocolate and coconut and cream ale just don't go together. Like cream ale is not the kind of beer you should be flavoring like that.
No.
Or the type that you should be making 10+%. Somehow it works.
I'll be honest with you though. At this point, after on the third cigar, after a couple of other pairings, to me this beer tastes like, I don't know, like creamy seltzer. It doesn't taste like anything. I can't get any of those notes. It's been sitting open for a while as well. I poured it right before we started the show, so it doesn't have that kind of sharp, salty quality to it. It doesn't have that nuance. If I can find some more, I'd love to send you guys just the beer by itself so you can try it, like properly cold and on a fresh palate to see what you really think.
I would love to, because I'm really curious. I mean, so I get like a pretty soft hop character, a surprising amount of salt, way more salt than I expect in a beer.
Right.
Like to the point where I kind of get like that roughness feeling on my tongue from the salt. Somehow it's still not bad. Then there's like a briny quality to it that reminds me of like that dirtiness of salt water, like that slight earthiness that you get. Like, I don't know, maybe it's the alkaline of the water that makes it like, it doesn't just taste like water with salt in it. It's got like that weird briny flavor. And then like some nice floral bitterness from the lemongrass. I'm really, really impressed with this because this on paper is so bad.
Yeah. Yeah. On paper, it's thank you, Tripp. It's terrible. Yeah. No, was not, like I said, I'm game for anything. Was just like, okay, I trust Denis. He's not gonna give us a shitty beer just for the sake of just dicking around,
I don't trust Denis, but I trust Carton.
Thank you for that distinction. Actually, I wanted to say that myself too, because really I've noticed that now that we've done a couple of shows, more than a couple of shows together, and we've experienced beer together and shared it with a lot of people, I feel like I've turned into this weird kind of Mad Hatter, like you love to hate me in this weird way where I'll go out and I'll do a sparkling seltzer, I'll do a Four Loko, I'll do like the PBR coffee thing, right? Mm-hmm. Stuff that everyone probably walks into a shop, sees, and avoids at all costs.
You get your White Claw on, Denis?
Oh, dude, boy.
Nobody.
Boy, like, howdy does he.
So cigar smokers especially, right? You're paying top dollar. If you're a hardcore cigar smoker, cigar geek, you're paying top dollar for a stick. You got your Yamasa or something else. You're not going to put a White Claw next to that, right? You're not going to put a Four Loko or some kind of crazy glittery thing that you just randomly saw in a liquor store. But if some other schmuck does it and you get to experience that vicariously, why not?
Yeah, exactly.
You may be curious. You may, if nothing else, maybe you're not going to go into a store tomorrow and buy the seltzer that I paired with my cigar. But you may go into a store tomorrow and have a different perspective on what you're interested in trying. And you might be more open to trying something that's unusual, something that's not in your normal kind of wheelhouse. And that's kind of what we go for.
I think I actually had an ice bath, so I actually am drinking this cold a little bit. I pulled it out when I pulled out the Oktoberfest, so it's been sitting. It's been warming up just a little bit. I agree with Tripp's assessment. The saltiness of this beer is really on point. It's almost kind of drying out the mouth a little bit.
Yeah.
There is that brininess for the clams. The lemongrass is actually surprisingly subtle, but prominent enough on the nose. Really well balanced. And there's not like the brininess isn't like, it's not overpowering.
Yeah. It's just the right amount to make it taste a little bit like seawater.
Yeah, it's not like you're drinking like straight olive water or like like olive juice or straight clam juice either or anything like that, or oyster liquor, which I freaking love. Not in a beer necessarily, but with beer typically. It's interesting you mentioned the salt. So we talk about salt and beer not being but I mean, what does everybody do with shitty Corona?
Absolutely.
They put lime and they salt the shit out of it, right? And that's kind of initially the salty characteristic of it. Obviously, not that lime component because this is lemongrass, but the salty component is definitely indicative of throwing a few pinches of salt into some Corona.
I mean, I've thrown a few pinches of salt into a lot of beers. I really like that. Just a little pinch of salt in beer. Even actually, I learned this tip from Alton Brown. Coffee, a little bit of salt in your
Yes.
coffee brings out like so much flavor and kind of cuts the bitterness a little bit. It's really weird.
Well, it's like coffee in a lemon wedge or lemon rind.
Yeah, with espresso.
It seems weird, but it seems to work really well.
Yeah, they're espresso. I like to have a little bit of a little bit of lemon zest with it. It's it brings out a lot of flavor components of that. The espresso in particular, I really enjoy it. Cuts the bitterness.
And a small glass of water too.
Brightens it up. A small glass of what?
Small glass of water. So you get an espresso with lemon rind. Usually you can get like a dark chocolate. Small piece of dark chocolate, and then just a bit of water, room temperature water still, and do that sort of pairing together, and it seems to work really well.
The thing that I'm really just liking about this beer is the cigar is going actually really well with it too, but really enjoying the spiciness of the cigar. I'm getting a little bit of spice heavy on it.
Oh yeah. It started off really spicy, and now it's calmed down a little bit, but it's still pretty significantly spicy.
I didn't know if some of that was some of the residual from the Whiskey Rebellion, but yeah, the spice has definitely calmed down quite a bit. What was I also going to say? It's really just pairing well with that savory quality of the beer, that saltiness that we were talking about, and it's really working. So while we enjoy the rest of this,
I was gonna say, did we get completely sidetracked and forget to go back to your question?
Yeah, so the salted pale ale and clamshells, brewed with clamshells and lemongrass, is kind of throwing us off our rocker here. But so I promised some shenanigans tonight, so I put together some fun questions, but also a couple of serious ones. And so I thought we would get a little bit more into these, so I was going to do a little column A and column B. So I'm actually going to pick one serious question, and then we're going to have some fun tonight. So, guys, we have to bring this up. We're Cigar Media, right? We have to talk about one major announcement that was kind of happened in the industry in the last couple of weeks. It was actually on the 21st of August. So we mentioned IPCPR a couple of times tonight. IPCPR, now PCA, which is the Premium Cigar Association that is the center of the cigar industry. It's the show that we all go to each and every year, and to cover the industry and cover what the industry is doing for the next calendar year. It's usually in the summer. Well, it's always in the summer. It's usually in July. It was a little earlier this year, just shy of the 4th of July weekend, which made that interesting. But one of the big announcements that came prior, just as we were kicking off the big IPCPR event, now PCA, was this huge event called Cigar Con, and capped off by an amazing article in the PCA publication, their magazine, with a headline saying "The consumers are coming." So there was going to be and I say I'm going to get to that in a second. The idea is that there was going to be a consumer attachment or a consumer event attached to this event that has been exclusively for retailers. Now, as media, we've been fortunate enough to cover the event because it is the largest cigar event of the industry, arguably. There are retailer events, there are consumer events that happen throughout the year. Your big smokes, your great smokes, Rocky Mountain Cigar Fest, etc., that happen throughout the country and everything. But this was a component that PCA was introducing as to elicit engagement and promote the brand, and also hopefully to raise some money as we're fighting a pretty significant battle against the FDA in this country.
Well, and a big point is part of it is they want more visibility They want to be more involved with the fight part that's going on with the FDA.
Right. Exactly.
And obviously they need money to do that.
They need money to do that. And they also wanted to, something that I was really excited to hear them say was they were really fighting or really wanting to, and there still are, push forward an agenda of education.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm all about educated consumers, because the less people that come into my humidor and ask me where the Cubans are, I'm all for. So anytime that ignorance can be squashed, I'm a big proponent of it. But all joking aside, this was a pretty large announcement, met with a bit of controversy, to put it lightly, among pretty much everybody, retailers, media, manufacturers. I would say that the mood overall at IPCPR this year regarding CigarCon was one of a little bit of leaning towards the negative connotation. There was a lot of support for it, namely from some big time manufacturers and cigar brand owners. Rocky Patel, Christian Iroa, Pete Johnson, who I had a great conversation with, was a big proponent for it. Supporting the industry was his kind of the forefront of his argument and why he was in favor of it. So this was a big, huge thing. A lot of us had questions. I had questions. I had doubts. And I think that one of the biggest misconceptions about CigarCon, for me personally, was specifically is that a lot of people thought, "Oh, Bear's against it," and I'm not against it. I'm in favor of anything that promotes this industry and keeps this industry alive and thriving. And so I just had a lot of questions into terms of how they were going to be able to pull it off. And it just
that's kind of where I was about it, which is it's not necessarily that I think it's a terrible idea and there's no way to make it work. It was that there was a huge mountain and they weren't prepared for it. That was my main concern, is that there wasn't enough thought put into the process around it. They kind of had the idea and then said, "Hey, everybody, we're going to do this." And they hadn't figured out all the puzzle pieces yet, which are very intricate.
It reminded me of, I don't know if you guys have seen the film Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks, Bill Paxton, Kevin Bacon. Okay. So in the middle of, they're trying to get back home. They've had this disaster in space. It's a biopic of the biggest disaster in NASA history, where they weren't able to get to the moon. They're trying to get these 3 astronauts home safely. NASA is, and Tom Hanks is plays one of the astronauts, Jim Lovell, and he's in the command module with Bill Paxton and Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon's bringing up this point about, something's not looking right on the horizon, and they're drawing back and forth. They're having this argument, and Tom Hanks' character says, he's like, "Listen, gentlemen, they start bickering, start fighting. Like, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. There are 1,000 things that have to happen in order. We are on number 8. And you're talking about number 492. And CigarCon kind of was this grand project of, there were 1,000 things that needed to happen, and they were on number 8, and they were like, "We're going to do it. Here's this grand announcement, and it's going to happen." And they were only on step number 8. And so it just seemed like a very, obviously a very grand project, a very positive, outlook on it. But it seemed very, I don't know what your impressions were, gentlemen, but the impression was that this was going to happen.
Yeah. My impression was that they had a very, they were set on making it happen, but they were very naive about how difficult it was going to be to put together.
The one thing that I appreciated was how candid they were and honest that they were, that
absolutely.
they didn't know a lot of things. We had questions and they didn't know, and they would say that they didn't know, which is, I got to hand it to you. I got to hand it to them. That's incredibly bold and honest, and I appreciated it, for one. But it also left me with more questions, whatever. But so the end result was on August 21st, so a little over a month and a half after the announcement and after IPCPR, now PCA, they've decided to postpone CigarCon. So CigarCon is not happening after all. It's not taking place. So the question I have to ask you guys is, are either one of you surprised?
I'm actually a little surprised they canceled it so early, because it seemed to me like they were so set on making it happen that it was going to be like February before they realized there's no way we can pull this off. We have to cancel it. I think the fact that they canceled it so early is a good thing before they really got too many of the consumer people excited about it.
Right.
Because I mean, my main concern is, I won't even call it my main concern. One of my big concerns is the consumers. I feel like the way my brain works, I can see it from every angle. Consumers are going to be pumped about this. They're going to,
Sure.
It's going to be awesome. If you have the chance to go to this, it's going to be amazing. The problem is I felt like there was so much disappointment that was going to happen if they actually managed to pull it off. And then there would be a bunch of repercussions that they wouldn't realize until it was way too late. So I think the fact that they canceled it early was a good idea. But like I said, I'm a little surprised that it happened as early as it did, because I thought they were just going to keep on trucking until it was almost too late.
So I want to read a quote from the press release, the statement in which they were deciding to postpone this. It's a quote from PCA President John Anderson, who I actually had the privilege of hearing from a little bit at the press conference regarding this announcement. John Anderson, who is the retailer owner of Drapers in DC,
Yeah.
An amazing retail establishment. John Anderson is a grand and awesome example of what a great retailer in this business should be. And his quote in this press release was, "Our goal in announcing CigarCon at our 2019 trade show was to elicit feedback and have conversations surrounding a consumer event. We have been active in listening mode and have taken it all in all of the industry feedback and have really adjusted many of the logistics surrounding the event. With all that in mind and in consultation with our manufacturing partners, we ultimately came to the conclusion that setting the goal for 2021 was the optimal time frame." So basically, he's saying that they're putting it off for a year. And that statement read by itself makes sense. You know, there's nothing off-putting about that. It sounds fantastic. Okay, you listen to feedback and are kind of reassessing things, and that's really positive. The issue that I have with it is that it just seems very counter to what we all witnessed at.
Yeah, they did not seem open to feedback when we had that press conference,
to say the least. And I think from my side, honestly, I wasn't surprised, knowing kind of, you know, on paper, obviously, like you guys said, on paper, it's totally different. When it comes to execution, especially at that scale that they were going for, especially the demographic that they were really trying to target, it's so different for them. There is that oh crap, what's the word? What's the English word for this?
This week on What's the English Word for This?
Curve. There's a learning curve to this. That's what I was. So there's a certain learning curve to it, because listen, you have a good idea, you get excited about it, you get other people excited about it. That's one thing. When you bring it out to a group of people, like Tripp said, to his point, they really didn't seem very receptive to getting that feedback necessarily. And to be honest, for those of us that are really kind of on our ball with, you know, the latest news, what's happening, that we really didn't hear much about this. There were some rumors here and there. There was not a lot of information. So to expect something to happen a year out, so close, it's impossible. Mm-hmm. Even a smaller scale event, it's just so impossible to do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I want to say hats off to the reporting that was done that actually brought this to light before the announcement.
Oh, yeah, it did.
To Charlie Minato of Half Wheel in particular, who did a brilliant job of reporting on this story and getting some of the details, a lot of it right. Some of it was incomplete, but self-described as incomplete. And then we got a lot of full characterization at the trade show, but a brilliant job of reporting by him and the folks over at Half Wheel specifically. But the thing that was interesting to me, I'm going to disagree with you guys on point. I think they were open to feedback. They all the credit in the world. You know, a day after this announcement, when again it was not met with praise and applause and a standing ovation, there were a lot of reservations around the room from a lot of people, media, like I said, manufacturers and retailers alike. And the day and a half into the trade show, who do I see standing in the middle of the cigar floor, the show floor, not hiding from anybody. In fact, smoking a cigar with executive director of CRA, Glenn Loop, is the director of PCA, Scott Pierce. And I walked up to them and started talking to them, and they wanted to be more open and more forthright. And so I want to give all the credit in the world to them. They weren't hiding in a corner on this. This is something that they were very proud of and should be. It's a very bold statement and a very bold initiative. And he could have easily had kind of taken the temperature in the room and kind of cowered in a corner if he had wanted to. I mean, the show floor is big enough. You can stay hidden, but he didn't.
Oh yeah.
And they didn't, and they kind of stood their ground on it. And that's why I was surprised, is because they seemed so, like you said, they seemed so set on it. But yet I got the receptors that they were kind of receptive to, like listening to people. But it was kind of like that listening of like, yes, I'll listen to you, but we've made our decision and we're moving forward, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just kind of like, again, you want that from leadership. You want them to you want leadership to make decisions and despite, you're never going to please everybody. That's just never going to happen.
Yeah, of course.
And so to persevere and push through, is something that you want from your leadership. And so I thought that in that regard, that was something to be applauded. Loved their candor. Loved their openness and everything. And I think they were open to feedback. It just didn't think like it was actually getting through, but apparently it did. And they've postponed it, at least for the time being. And they're shooting for 2021. So it'll be interesting, hopefully with another year of planning under their belts, a little bit more preparation, to be had. They can come out in 2020 with guns blazing and really answer a lot of those unanswered questions and put a lot of people's minds at ease and hopefully make this a successful event. Because if this is successful, it's like in sports, guys.
Everybody wins if it's successful.
Yeah, exactly. It's like in sports, guys. Winning cures everything.
Well, I'm gonna go back to a really classic old sports quote that I'm sure both of you guys are familiar with, and I'm not really a sports guy, but I say, "Fuck you, Jobu. I do it myself." And that's the thing. Listen, damn, I had a really good point, and I completely lost my train of thought. But
Pedro Serrano, Major League.
I started thinking of the movie. Yeah. Dude, it's a weird thing. I think the industry itself and us as consumers, us as media manufacturers, we're all still trying to figure out what's happening. And the pace of things after the boom really changed. And we're in this weird new generation where we want everything yesterday. A lot of times when you're in that mode, it's easy to overlook certain, key aspects. Whether you want to launch a product, whether you want to launch an event, whether you want to engage consumers, manufacturers, and really bridge those gaps, it's easy to get excited and kind of fall short on the execution of that because you're so busy and kind of you have that tunnel vision. I'm glad. I'm really glad that they're going to wait, and I hope that during this time they kind of really start to engage not just media and not just retailers, but also kind of engaging the manufacturers and seeing where, they can kind of support each other, because it's going to require an effort from everybody.
Yeah. I think that's the main thing that has been concerning me, is that the burden is on the manufacturers of figuring out how to redesign booths, figuring out how to, I've heard some people talk about holding seminars and stuff like that in their booths. And the manufacturers are the one who if it goes badly, they're going to be the ones paying for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Not just in dollars, in goodwill from consumers.
Of course, they stand to lose a lot if it doesn't go well.
No, absolutely. It puts them at the forefront, which they already are, and it kind of puts a spotlight on them in a necessary fashion. So if they're not prepared for it, it reflects poorly on them. And but ultimately, if the organization behind them isn't 100% solid on it, it's no one's going to look and point fingers at PCA. They're going to look at point fingers at Davidoff, at Romacraft,
exactly.
Things like that. And so, to me, the thing that was most concerning to me was that the consumers that are showing up to an event like this, and I've talked about this brand off and on. They've, he was a top 3 cigar for me last year in my top 10, but a cigar brand like HVC, Rainier Lorenzo, making great stuff, great cigars. And for perhaps the nerds in this discussion, all about it, right? But you get out there on a grander scale, and the guys are going to pop the $750,000, $2,000. We still don't know what the price on this ticket would be, but they're going to prop a premium down for this event. They're going to want to either do one of two things. They're either going to want to they're the smoker that gravitates towards things like Davidoff, Altadis, General, Drew Estate, the large booths, which actually arguably could handle a bigger crowd than anything else, but that kind of leaves people like HVC, JSK, Cavalier of Geneva. I'm just naming some small companies off the top. Even the
companies that are household names.
Even a larger size, a decent sized booth this past year was Oscar Valadares, who makes incredible stuff. And his stuff's catching popularity, but do you see a bulk of consumers flocking towards his booth? But to that same point of a decent sized booth, that he couldn't handle a crowd anyway, even if he could. But what we were talking about Skip Martin earlier, Romacraft, decent sized booth.
I mean, Skip is one of the ones that comes to mind because he's going to have, depending on the crowd, maybe 5 people, might be 20 people, might be 100 people. They just want to hang out with Skip all day. They don't care about the other cigars.
Right.
They just want to come hang out in Skip's booth and sit around, and then other people can't get into the booth. How are they going to manage that? They still haven't figured that out,
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you with my point, but
no, it's absolutely true though. But giving another year, another 365 days, there's a lot of time now to address some of these concerns and these questions, and I'm sure that they were some of the major points that they were listening to. So overall, I'm happy about it. I'm excited about what PCA is doing as far as the educational arm of it. And hopefully they continue to develop this website that they're rebuilding, this portal that they're talking about for education of their retailers and now consumers and stuff. So I'm really excited about what it could become and everything. So moving on to some fun stuff, though. Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate for diving into a little bit of seriousness as we're drinking and smoking cigars. But I wanted to ask, I know you guys like music. And music seems to be a theme in the cigar industry for reasons that surpass my understanding. I will never understand that this industry's love of really loud, obnoxious music wherever they go. There's several booths at IPCPR that are just blaring music at all volumes all throughout the day. And I'm just like, I don't get it. But music seems to be a very prominent theme throughout this industry. And there's a lot of former musicians that are now, in cigar manufacturing and in cigar ownership. And 3 people came to mind with this question. So the first person you think about music, of course, is the great late Avo Uvasian, who in his first part of his life was a accomplished musician who later became a brand ambassador for one of the most prominent brands that grace our industry, Avo, that bears his name. Of course, he's passed on, unfortunately. And but there are 3 members who are living that were prominent musicians, or still do dabble at least a little bit, that came to mind with this. So if I was going to ask you this question, if you were going to start a band with only one of these cigar industry people, who would you choose? So the first one is a drummer, Nick Perdomo, who features his drum set and plays actually drums at IPCPR. He's very talented. I've seen him play.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Another one, you guys may not realize this, is before he became the godfather of boutique cigars, Ernesto Perez Carrillo Jr. was also a drummer. And then, of course, very infamously as well, moved out to California to become a musician, and then eventually fell into the cigar industry, and now is the head of arguably one of the greatest boutique brands to ever come up through the industry, is Pete Johnson of Tatuaje and L'Atelier. So Pete Johnson, Nick Perdomo, and Ernesto Perez Carrillo Jr. are your choices, gentlemen. Who do you start a band with, and why?
I think the answer might be kind of obvious, but I would start with a band with Pete, and the only reason for that is that he's the only one that would probably tolerate the kind of music that I play and listen to. I feel like Nick and Ernesto would not be down.
They wouldn't be down with the sickness or whatever.
For us, I think that's part of the draw really with Tatuaje and kind of Pete's presence within the industry. He's I wouldn't consider him somebody that kind of really puts himself out in the spotlight. He just has that air about him that people want to talk to him and hang out, and he's open and willing to talk to people, and he carries that through his, not just his cigar side, but also the stuff that he's passionate about, like music. It's that sort of newer generation. And obviously, guys like Tripp and I kind of end up gravitating toward Pete. But this year, I had a weird, not a bromance thing, but I had a weird.
It was a bromance. I was there.
I had a moment, man. I had a moment with somebody, and it was musically speaking, considering the stuff that I listen to a lot of different styles of music. I've played many different styles of music on guitar and piano. And there was one guy that kind of clicked with me really well, and that was Sebastian from Cavalier. And like, if I had to pick anybody, I know it wasn't on your list, and I don't think he's actually a musician, but his sort of background.
He strikes me as possibly a musician.
He might, considering where he's from, he might dabble. I'm sure he plays guitar, but sort of is somebody who listens to that realm of very obscure, I guess now it's obscure, I don't know, obscure style of music. That would be my guy. Absolutely. Him and Pete. I think Pete would be awesome to involve in any musical project, whether he's actually playing or if he's just kind of helping out, organizing, getting people together, because he has that air about him where everyone kind of gravitates toward him.
I don't disagree with any of those points, so at all. But I will say this: my choice is actually a little less obvious. A lot of people know he made my cigar of the year last year, the Encore Valientis, Ernesto Perez Carrillo Jr. Everyone knows that I enjoy his cigars. I think every point you made about Pete is spot on. But I would actually pick Nick Perdomo.
Really?
Because I have actually witnessed the greatness of him behind a kit,
behind a 58-piece drum kit,
and the drummer is the foundation of any band, man. They don't get the glory. They're not the lead singer. They're not the lead guitarist. They're not the front man. But if you have a good foundation of a guy who can keep the beat, keep the time, and someone with as much talent as Nick Perdomo, I have to say I would choose him. It would be hard. Don't get you mind. I picked those three guys because I thought they were all great choices.
Yeah.
I narrowed the scope quite a bit, but I'm going with the less obvious Nick Perdomo is my pick. So I thought that was a fun question as well. So another one. So we're gonna go in a little serious, but we're going to have a little fun with it as well. With the upcoming presidential election next year coming up, and the Democrats scrambling for a candidate to combat the incumbent president, Trump. It's going to drag on for months and months, and we're going to have, I'm sure, a lot of entertaining discussion, or at least witness entertaining discussion among candidates, as it were, until that fateful day in November of 2020, when we either elect a new president or re-elect the current president. So my question to you is this: what two people from the cigar industry would you choose to run for president and vice president, and why? So there, you have to come up with a presidential ticket. Who is your president from the cigar industry, and who is the vice president? So while you go, I will go ahead on this.
Damn,
I'm not giving you choices, but
like the president, I immediately snap to somebody for the president.
Okay, then shoot.
It's
okay,
the vice
shoot.
president. President is absolutely Rocky Patel. He's
Interesting. Okay.
He just has the attitude and the character of somebody who people listen to.
So
I don't know who his vice president would be, though.
I'm
thinking about that.
I always forget the author, but I read this wonderful book that I've shared with Miguel Shodell a couple of times. It's a book called How to Fight Presidents. And it's a satire basically built on why presidents are badasses. All of our presidents have been badasses. And at the introduction, there's a point in the introduction where he basically describes, in order to become president of the United States, you have to be fucking out of your mind. You have to be crazy. You have to be arrogant. You have to be so comfortable in your skin, knowing the fact that you are going to take office and 50% of this country is going to fucking hate you. And it's a lose-lose situation going in, and you have to just be outside of your mind to actually seek office for the presidency, and God forbid win. And so that's a really good choice, Tripp, because Rocky's always done things his way.
Exactly.
He's never really cared about whatever anyone else has ever thought. He's incredibly successful. It doesn't matter what you think of his cigars. Anyone who looks at him and his career objectively will tell you that Rocky is a great success. So that's a great pick.
I think a big part of it is, no matter how much you hate his cigars, you could hate them more than anyone else on the planet. If you talk to him for 5 minutes, you're gonna love him. If you actually spend time with that guy, like he's just fantastic at talking to people and meeting new people and making a good impression.
Well, we were talking about the CigarCon announcement. He was one of the manufacturers that was up there, spotlighted in support of this very controversial move, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was very polished and poised, and took criticism head on and handled it, frankly, probably better than anybody else. And was incredible. That's a great choice. He is not the person I was thinking of.
Really?
But that's really fantastic. That I really like that. Dennis, do you have anyone in mind for either president or vice president?
It's weird. Talking about the arrogance, to your point, and of course, I hope this doesn't come off the wrong way. It might.
This industry is fraught with people who are arrogant, and they have to be. So
everybody's a character, right?
Exactly. So
I would kind of lean towards Saka for president. But and this is weird because for vice president, I'm leaning in the realm of possibly like a Skip Martin character for the vice president role.
I was actually thinking someone like Skip, just as an everyman.
But at the same time, oh crap, what's his name? Oh Jesus, it's weird because it's so late here. I'm like starting to blank out on things. Ventura Cigars, our good friend
Michael Giannini.
Yes,
Mike Giannini. I think really for vice president, Mike Giannini, the way he carries himself, he's got that really good foundation for connecting with people and being able to kind of translate those relationships and micronize them in a way that a president could consume. So while those two, while Saka and Giannini are a very unlikely, it's a very unlikely pair. I think oddly that might work.
I think you're right. I could see that.
But then, like, hey,
Those are some interesting choices. You got a vice president yet, Tripp?
Kyle
I'm gonna
Gillis.
go JD.
Jonathan
Drew.
Oh, Rocky Patel. Okay, Patel Drew ticket.
He'd be a
Man.
loose cannon, the perfect opposite to Rocky Patel's composure.
He's got that frontman quality to him, JD's got that. He's what's Jean-Michel always says this. It's the joie de vivre, right?
Yeah,
It's kind
yeah.
of like that. He's got that.
So I was thinking more. I took it from a more literal potential here, and Rocky Patel's a great pick, Tripp. I think that I think I completely
Like
overlooked him.
I actually he's one of the people I could see actually moving into politics.
So the person I could actually see going into politics, if you've had any lengthy conversation, which I've had the great fortune of having lengthy conversations with this individual, the person that I would love to see run for political office, and I think he would be an outstanding political, maybe not president per se, but an outstanding political representative would be Jeff Borsowitz.
Oh,
That's a good pick too.
And so Jeff would be my president, and my vice president would be a young and up and coming kind of star, so to speak, but one with great foundational excellence, has a family that has been prominent in the cigar industry, particularly in this country, for over 100 years, actually celebrating their 125th this year. And so that would select Drew Newman as my vice president. So
that's a good choice too.
Problematic if we're actually running, because they both come from Florida, so really wouldn't do well probably in terms of seeking electors from other parts of the country, but yeah. That's getting a little technical for what I was kind of shooting for. I was just trying to have some fun. But Borsowitz, Newman for my ticket, Patel, Martin for Tripp, and Saka.
Patel JD. Patel
JD. Patel JD. So Patel Drew.
I gotta get a Patel Drew 2024 sticker, man.
Oh man. And then so we'd go. So Dennis, you were saying Saka.
And Giannini.
Saka and Giannini. Oh, man. Yes. T-shirts need to be made. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, I want to get into this last pairing a little bit. We've already talked about the beer at length. Weird, but I would say successful. I'm enjoying it. It's fantastic.
It's odd. It's kind of fun. I like that it's a low alcohol. So it's kind of weird because it's not in that realm of now the trend is everything has to be imperialized. Everything has to be in your face, right? If you're going to have a pale ale, it has to be 7%. I think that's a cop-out. I think it's a really easy cop-out for a lot of breweries to go and produce something very high alcohol and kind of hide a lot of those subtle flavors. That's why you don't see a lot of Pilsners, for example, coming out of the U.S. that are really if you're someone who appreciates classic Pilsners, you don't see a lot of that coming out of the U.S. Generally, they're over-malted or over-hopped.
100%. So the cigar, which Tripp and I both described as spicy at the very beginning, kind of settled off and toned off a little bit. The construction's been impeccable. The draw is very, very good from my end. Really been enjoying it. I say that it probably has some Nicaraguan characteristics to it. I do get a little bit of Honduran influence, perhaps a little bit of earthiness that have kind of creeped in a little bit. Really great shape for me personally. Kind of a Corona Gorda, kind of like the first one that we smoked. A little bit longer perhaps, but if we're talking about true definitions. But I'm enjoying the cigar. I think it pairs well with the beer. Slightly, the cigar's flavor initially slightly overpowered the lightness of the beer. But I think overall it's a good pairing. I think I
feel like the salt in the beer actually really elevates the flavor enough to compete with the cigar somehow.
Yeah, I agree with that point. Good. But I would like to say that I think, because I think we talked about this last time we did this. My favorite pairing actually, Tripp, belongs to you. I think you nailed it. I think the Oktoberfest with the Whiskey Rebellion was fantastic. I think I do like Denis's next and myself, and I really enjoy my pairing. I'm not just throwing myself at the bottom for it. I think all three pairings were really fantastic. Tripp, I think for me personally, I think you win this round, so to speak.
All right.
But Denis, I think you did an excellent job. There's a lot of complexity to this cigar. The beer in its weirdness that we've talked about. The way that the beer is warmed up now and the cigar is kind of has been complex and has changed. It's kind of gone along for the ride in a good way. So I think creatively, I think you win, Denis, because I think that it's a little bit. While Tripp's was a lot more straightforward and just solid all the way around, I think your cigar was a little bit more thought-provoking in the sense that it actually went with the cigar for the ride of the beer, so to speak. So I'm anxious to find out what it is. Tripp, any final thoughts before Denis gives us a couple of guesses? Because I'm pretty sure I'm going to get this wrong.
I'm pretty sure I am too. I've got one guess in the chamber, but I'm almost certain that I'm wrong. The size isn't doing it any favors.
Yeah.
It's not doing me any favors because it's such a ubiquitous size. Everybody's got this size, just about. Yeah, I don't know. The beer, like one of the interesting things, the way Denis mentioned, like the ABV, or I guess the way both of you talked about the ABV. Typically, you're going to either see a crazy beer with a high ABV because you're only going to have one, or a kind of lighter, milder beer with a low ABV because you're going to have seven. This is a low ABV beer. You could not pay me to drink three of these. You might be able to pay me to drink two. You wouldn't be able to pay me, no matter what amount of money, I couldn't drink three of these in a night. Which I think is a very daring approach to make something that technically should be sessionable, but because of the flavors, it is not at all sessionable. I think it's really interesting, and I love it. For the pairings, I don't know. I'm having a hard time ranking the pairings because I think all three of them work in really different ways. Like, this is the ultimate contrast pairing.
Right.
Where it should not work together, but the cigar is better because of the beer, and the beer is better because of the cigar, and that's what makes a good pairing.
True story. Denis, any thoughts on the pairings? Who wins, who loses, or no losers?
I mean, honestly, I was actually overall, I think for me, the pairings really work very well. For me, your pairing, I think, takes the cake tonight. That was one of those things. Obviously, I've had my pairing before. Tripp's pairing was phenomenal, especially because of the timing, because of the season. It just fits. And that cigar, for me, I can have that in the morning. I can have it at night. It's a fantastic cigar. There's no, you can't avoid that fact. It's great. And your pairing, for me, is the best, I think, for out of all the ones we had tonight. Just because it was so surprising and so, it's weird to say, but kind of relieving. I didn't have to think about anything. It just worked. It happened, and I could see myself definitely having more of that beer, and not just with that cigar and other cigars. It really lends itself well. As far as my cigar for tonight, I can say both of you guys have had at least one. Tripp has had probably four. 3 or 4, but maybe not in this size necessarily, but yeah.
So, is it, I'm going to go out on a limb. I'll go with the brand. I'm not going to go with the line specifically, but I'll go with the brand. Is it Foundation?
No, it is not.
See, I was thinking Foundation, maybe CT 142 or something, but
see,
it's not all that far off, to be honest.
I had a guess. The way that you said that I've had probably 4 of them makes me think my guess was completely wrong. My guess was going to be Crown Head's J.D. Howard. It reminds me a little bit of that.
Interesting.
Let me get a closer look at this wrapper. Man, I do not know. I'm going to throw out a guess. I'm just trying to think of what to narrow it down to.
Do you want me to give you a region of wrapper?
Yes.
Well, I will put Connecticut out there for you.
Oh, shit.
And we have some friends out there that are pretty heavy on those Connecticut's.
I'm going to guess T52 Corona Gorda.
The Corona Viva?
I knew the wrapper wasn't
the Corona Viva?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a Corona Gorda.
Is it the T52?
No. So do you want me to tell you what it is?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the BOTL.
Oh, really?
Oh, shit.
This is the yep.
Broadleaf, Connecticut shade.
Dude.
Yeah. Oh, damn.
It's shade, man. Which I've had a boner for, for a while. Like I really dig the shade stuff. I think it's a really versatile leaf. And for this size especially, I personally prefer the Lancero, but for this size I think it's great.
Yeah, broadleaf on the broadleaf on the wrapper, shade on the binder, Nicaraguan filler. Man, good cigar. So no Honduran, so I was wrong on the Honduran part of it, but yeah, dynamite cigar. So
well
fantastic. Done. So we have Davidoff, Drew Estate, and Roma Craft represented tonight. Panther Island Brewing Company Allergies. Heater Allen Brewing Company Bobtoberfest. And Carton Brewing Digger, the salted pale ale brewed with clamshells and lemongrass. I have to say that. I have to say all of the ingredients for that particular beer that we've had.
It's a crazy beer.
Yeah, absolutely.
The salinity of it is insane, and the fact that it's still drinkable.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It's an approachable beer. It's certainly weird, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's off the shelf completely.
Yeah, exactly. It's not completely crazy.
No, not at all.
At the same time, it kind of is.
Not at all. Well, gentlemen, I think that is going to wrap us up tonight. I really, really appreciate all of your time tonight. This was another fantastic long show. Not as quite as long as our second one, but still up there as well. But I really appreciate everyone for tuning in tonight. It was a fantastic show. 3 great pairings. I think we can all agree with that.
Agreed.
Probably, I think I was the one that stumped us the most for the most part. You guys were on par with the Dominican influence. I guess Dennis and I kind of tied in that effect.
I almost guessed Undercrown for Dennis. I thought that was too obvious, and it wasn't dark enough, which is why I went T52.
Yeah. I definitely thought the spice level was kind of stock cut Habano, man. I really did. But great beers, great cigars, great company. Really appreciate everyone for hanging with us for such a late hour. Dennis especially, it's really late on the East Coast. Really appreciate everyone tuning in and everything. But thank you everyone out there for listening, for watching. Make sure if you guys are checking us out, wherever you listen to podcasts, you're listening to us exclusively because of Cornelius and Ante Premium Cigars. And as always, this cigar is sponsored by Drew Estate. So well done, Dennis, inserting the sponsor cigar. Well done. But for everyone out there, really appreciate it. For Tripp, Waldrop of Cigar Federation, Denis Tsvang of Cigar Federation, I'm Bear Duplessis. This has been ELOSOFUMARTAKES Take 89 in the books. Check out next week. We've got a fantastic guests lined up for Take 90, 91, and 92. It'll be fantastic. Check out our Facebook page at ELOSOFUMAR as we've got those guests lined up, and we appreciate everyone for tuning in. As always, I'm Bear Duplessis, and we will see you next time.